Chapter 248. Because of the explosion just now, not only was the glass damaged, but the entire motorcycle seemed to have a problem. After driving for more than 10 kilometers, it violently trembled and then stopped. Long Yingqing tried to start the engine several times but failed. She helplessly shook her head at Jiang Xiu and said, "No, the car is broken." She pushed open the door and lightly jumped out of the car. She pretended to open the car cover. In reality, Long Yingqing didn't understand cars at all, but she didn't want to show that she was bad. She was a very strong girl. Her pretty face turned cloudy, showing that she was very worried. She was still wearing a red dress today with black jeans. It perfectly outlined her waist, buttocks and beautiful long legs. Because it was relatively cold in Gaul, her inner shirt was a white high-collared sweater. The sharp contrast between red and black was vividly reflected by the white, showing her peerless beauty. She angrily closed the car cover and said, "The engine is broken." This time Long Yingqing was right. Jiang Xiu was a poor ghost in his previous life. Later on, he went to the immortal martial continent. There were many blind spots in his life. For example, he didn't know anything about car repair. There weren't many people in Gaul, and the cities were far apart. There were no villages in front of him and no shops behind him. This was a bit troublesome. Jiang Xiu said, "I was wrong." He secretly regretted it in his heart. Just now, in order to save energy, he didn't forcefully resist the force of the rocket launcher's explosion. Instead, he let the car bear it by itself. He only pressed down on the car to prevent it from flying out. He didn't expect that a moment of laziness would cause the current trouble. Long Yingqing was confused when she heard this. She frowned and said, "Where did you go wrong?" Jiang Xiu said, "Letting such a beautiful girl stand on the side of the road, suffering the wind and sun, enduring inhuman treatment, isn't it wrong enough for me? I made a big mistake." Long Yingqing couldn't help but laugh. He really didn't think that the ice-cold Jiang Luoxia would tease her like this. For a moment, his heart was filled with sweetness. "You stinking poor." Long Yingqing went to the car and saw that the mineral water in the trunk was still intact. She took it out and handed it to Jiang Xiu. The relationship between the two of them eased substantially for the first time. However, don't worry too much. The direction of the Holy Land happens to be the famous Hula Bell Grass Mountain of Galuya. It's a very famous tourist attraction. Although it's remote, there are still people who often drive there. Jiang Xiu said, "No one will come for a while." Jiang Xiu's eyesight and hearing were amazing. There were no cars within a few miles. Long Yingqing said, "There's no other way, we can only wait." Of course, they could also call back and ask someone to drive over, but they had already been driving for 4 or 5 hours. Even if they sped over, it would still take 4 hours. Jiang Xiu looked at her and found that this girl wasn't tall. When she sneered, she was quite beautiful, especially with a bit of shyness. Her skin was especially tender and snow-white. Long Yingqing was a little nervous under his gaze. She reached out and tucked her drooping hair behind her ear. There was no one around, a man and a woman alone. This guy started to tease her again. He couldn't have missed him so much. Long Yingqing's pretty face turned red and her little heart tightened. "I remember you have the strength of a black belt in Taekwondo?" Long Yingqing said timidly. "My strength as a black belt is still like a child in your eyes." "What should I do? What should I do? What should I do if he wants to use force? I'm not his opponent at all. Is my pure body going to be ruined in his hands?" She was so nervous that she tightly gripped the mineral water bottle. The mineral water bottle was squeezed out of shape by her. Jiang Xiu said, "Then your strength should be pretty good. You push the cart, I'll drive." Long Yingqing's pair of beautiful big eyes almost fell out. "You're also a man? You have the nerve to let me, a delicate little girl, push the cart behind while you sit in the car. I can't believe this is real. I might as well let you have a good time. No wonder you were so good just now, and even took the initiative to tease me. So you were waiting for me here. This bastard, I should have seen through his nature a long time ago." But when she remembered that he was Jiang Luoxia, she could only say, "Okay." Miss Long's black belt in Taekwondo was a combination of technique and strength, not brute force. Jiang Xiu tried to start the car again. Although he wasn't familiar with cars, he had seen it on TV. He might not be able to start the car, but after trying a few times, it seemed like he was just a little bit off. Long Yingqing came over and said, Jiang Xiu, how about you push the cart? I'll try. For the first time, Jiang Xiu agreed and said, Okay, you go, I'll push you. Long Yingqing felt that this fellow's words had a different meaning, and her beautiful face couldn't help but heat up. She cursed in her heart, rogue, and looked at him shyly. She felt that she might have misunderstood. According to a brainless expert, girls were different from boys. When a girl was with a boy, she would always think in that direction, so she should have fallen in love with him. Long Yingqing, you can't have fallen in love with him, right? No, absolutely not. He was so annoying, so overbearing, and even threatened the Long family. How could she fall in love with him? Little did she know that an incomparably arrogant person like her yearned to be conquered even more than an ordinary girl. She didn't realize that her body and mind had already been conquered by Jiang Xiu. In the deepest part of her consciousness, she hoped that her body would also be conquered. Jiang Xiu pushed the car, and the car easily started moving. Long Yingqing tried to start the car a few times, but it didn't work, so it was possible that there was something wrong with the engine. He could only wait for the car to arrive. Long Yingqing asked, Did you bring money? Jiang Xiu said, Do you think I need to bring money when I go out? Long Yingqing was helpless. He could only retract his thumb and change it to a free ride. The car mercilessly sped past them. A young miss like her was used to not bringing money when she went out. After blocking the car for about half an hour, there were more than a dozen cars that passed by, but none of them stopped. Jiang Xiu frowned, and the next car did not stop, and directly hijacked the car. An off-road vehicle came from behind. It was a rather large model, a big Mercedes-Benz. Before they could stop the car, the other party had already approached them. Rolling down the window, it was a standard beautiful Chinese girl's face. Hey, are you Chinese? Yes. Long Yingqing said. Our car is broken, can you give us a ride? The girl said, Of course. Long Yingqing was overjoyed and pulled Jiang Xiu, wanting to show off. See, he was still stopped by me. She opened the back seat door and got in. The space in the car was very big, and the car was quite new. There were only 2 people in the car, and there was a boy in sportswear and glasses. From the looks of it, he should be an office worker, and the muscles on his face were more relaxed. The girl was about 20 years old, very beautiful, and looked very international. Her gaze sized up Jiang Xiu. Handsome, are you going to Hula Bell Grass Mountain to play too? Jiang Xiu said. Play? Yes. The girl said. Do you come to Galuya occasionally, or do you live here all year round? She seemed to be very interested in Jiang Xiu. The boy on the side said sourly. Xiaoying, why are you asking so much? The one called Xiaoying said. I'm willing. Focus on driving, handsome, ignore her. You haven't said anything yet? Jiang Xiu said. I come to Galuya occasionally. Xiaoying tilted her head and talked to Jiang Xiu. This girl was definitely very beautiful among normal people, but compared to the girls Jiang Xiu came in contact with, she was far inferior. Her gaze finally landed on Long Yingqing, and only then did she realize that this girl was actually so beautiful. She had a feeling of being shocked. Wow, little sister is very beautiful. Jiang Xiu, is she your girlfriend? Jiang Xiu said, No, we are normal classmates. Long Yingqing didn't say anything, and just quietly watched Xiaoying try her best to flirt with Jiang Xiu. Xiaoying said, Then do you have a girlfriend? Jiang Xiu said, I don't have a girlfriend. Long Yingqing sneered in her heart. You and Cheng Lingran are so close. If you aren't a girlfriend, then what are you? As expected, no matter how strong a man is, he is still a man, unable to move when he sees a girl. Xiaoying said, Don't joke, how can you not have a girlfriend when you are so handsome? Jiang Xiu smiled and didn't say anything. Only then did he notice that his face was in a deified state. He was now a god, and the most natural state was the deified state. Other than his eyes being normal, his entire person was like an ancient god, so handsome that no one would have any friends. Long Yingqing was probably flirting with him because of his great beauty. 3 hours later, the car drove to Hula Bell Grass Mountain. Jiang Xiao and Long Yingqing were about to get out of the car when Xiaoying said, "Let's play together, the more the merrier." Jiang Xiao shook his head and said, "No, we still have things to do. As thanks, I'll give you a piece of advice. It's not safe here, so leave as soon as possible to avoid losing your life." Chapter 249. Xiaoying didn't believe what Jiang Xiao said. Although Gaoyua's security wasn't as good as China's, it shouldn't be that dangerous. She thought that Jiang Xiao wanted to get rid of her. After all, in terms of appearance, she couldn't compare to the girl beside him called Long Yingqing. "Don't be like that. Let's play together. We even brought some barbecue." Jiang Xiao had already walked with Long Yingqing towards the Hula Bell Grass Mountain. The endless green mountain range stretched as far as the eye could see. Between the ups and downs, one could see the ruins of ruined castles. According to Gaoyua's historical records, there had been 2 wars here. These castles were all destroyed on the battlefield. It had a heavy feeling of history. The boy beside her said, "Xiaoying, forget it. He's already ignoring you. Why are you still going up to him?" Xiaoying said, "He's cool. What do you know?" The boy said, "What's the matter? He's just a little handsome. What's the big deal? In this day and age, it's all about background and family property. My family has a wine manor in Gaoyua. Its market value is no less than 100 million. Xiaoying said, "My parents want your money, but I don't. I just like handsome people. Appearance is justice. Do you understand?" The boy muttered, "I'm ugly. Is that my fault?" Xiaoying's gaze followed Jiang Xiao's back view. She couldn't help but exclaim, "He's too perfect. He's like the most perfect god that walked out of a fairy tale." The boy said, "Xiaoying, you're too young. You're too deceived by superficial things. You'll grow old eventually. When you look at people, you must look at their talent. Talent won't age with age." Xiaoying said, "Talent is something that I'll look at when I'm over 40 and become an old woman." The boy said, "When you become an old woman, are you sure you won't like little fresh meat?" Xiaoying couldn't answer. She felt that this possibility was really high. Appearance was everything. Xiaoying said, "Jinrong, forget it. Give up. I won't like you. Even if I'm with you, I'll only like your money. I won't like you." The boy nodded excitedly and said, "If you like me, money is enough. I don't have any talent." Xiaoying rolled her eyes and ignored him. She got into the car and drove into the town. When they arrived, they were shocked. Red lines had been set up in many places, and armed men could be seen everywhere. There were too many cars and too many people. The cars were all luxury cars. Even their Mercedes-Benz was not enough. The news of Jiang Luoxia going to the Heavenly Gate by himself spread. Not only did the Li family of North Korea and the martial cultivators of North Korea who couldn't stand Jiang Luoxia, but there were also martial cultivators from China, Japan, Europe, Southeast Asia, Hong Kong, and Taiwan. This was a serious matter. The number 1 demigod in China had charged to the heavenly gates. This had never happened before since the heavenly gates had appeared. There were probably no less than 50 demigods who had come. There were probably more than 10,000 people gathered in the small town today. The Gaoyuan Security Bureau was very nervous, and the experts of Gaoyua brought out all their armed forces. What's going on? Xiaoying was already stunned. She could not help but think of Jiang Xiao's words just now. The man was also stunned. "I've been here a few times, but I've never seen such a scene." Xiaoying said, "Is it a politician from some country who came here for a vacation?" The man looked around and saw that there were really good cars everywhere. There were also countless bodyguards in black suits surrounding the important people. He could not help but say, "This is really grand." Xiaoying said, "If I didn't know, I would have thought that there was going to be a war in Gaoyua." Someone on the side said to them in English, "Are you ordinary people?" Xiaoying said, "Aren't you?" The foreigner was stunned. "All right, it seems like you don't know what's going to happen. There's going to be a war of the gods here. If you're just ordinary people, you should leave quickly." Xiaoying almost laughed. "You're saying it as if it's real. A war of the gods?" "A war of the gods?" The foreigner said, "Something like that. A war of the gods is a confrontation between 2 sides. This time, it's one against all the gods. His eyes were filled with infatuation. Xiaoying said, "Are you serious?" Jianrong said, "You're joking, right, sir?" The foreigner smiled and did not say anything else. What are they doing? Not far away, a lot of machinery was moved over. There were even video cameras. In the sky, there were also cats making adjustments. The foreigner said, "Of course they want to film this battle." The things that were filmed would be the absolute secret of each country. Xiaoying was not afraid of strangers at all. "Can I see it?" The foreigner pondered for a moment. He could not resist her curious gaze and wanted to show her some treasures. The main thing was that it had not started yet, and they could not see anything, so she just let him be. However, Xiaoying was stunned when she saw the camera. Under the camera, a man and a woman were riding tall horses and galloping over the undulating grassy hills. "Isn't this? We know him." The foreigner smiled and said, "You two must be joking with me, right? You two know Jiang Luoxia?" Xiaoying said, "Jiang Luoxia. Damn, the handsome guy gave me a fake name. We really know each other. They came in my car. The girl next to him is called Long Long something." The foreigner's expression turned serious. "Long Yingqing." "Yes, Long Yingqing." The foreigner's gaze changed when he looked at Xiaoying. He held his head in an exaggerated manner. "Oh my god, you really know Jiang Luoxia? He came in your car?" Xiaoying asked carefully. "Is he really that amazing?" The foreigner almost broke down. "Do you know who started this unprecedented war of the gods? It's him. It's this guy. The powerful #1 demigod in China." Demigod. In the video, Jiang Xiu felt that he was being spied on. He glanced around coldly and saw a miniature cat flying across the sky. With a wave of his hand, an invisible force shot out. With a bang, the cat was destroyed on the spot. Jiang Xiu and Long Yingqing entered the mountain range and found that there were many people in the town. However, cars could not drive in the mountain range. Long Yingqing told Jiang Xiu that the Holy Land was still very far away. She had ridden a horse the last time she came, so the two of them went to the horse farm to rent a horse. Long Yingqing said, "It's too naive to try to use a cat to film. A cat can't fly to the Holy Land at all. Even if it can, it will be out of range." If it could be filmed, there was only one place that could do it, and that was the satellite hanging in space. In fact, the things captured by the satellite were much more than what the world knew. Long Yingqing said, "Are you really going in?" Jiang Xiu said, "Of course, don't ask such a stupid question." Long Yingqing said, "This is not stupid at all. Do you know how many experts there are?" "There are." Her voice stopped abruptly. She knew how powerful the Heaven's Gate was, but the Long family was also part of the Heaven's Gate. If she revealed the information about the Heaven's Gate, she would be betraying the Long family. There are more than 20 demigods. But she still said it out loud. Long Yingqing said, "I heard that China is a forbidden area of the Heaven's Gate. The people of the Heaven's Gate don't dare to casually enter China. And because my Long family contributed to the founding of the country, we are the only exception. Even so, the demigods of my Long family can't stay in China, but live in Europe all year round. You can return to your country. There's no need to fight with them." Long Yingqing urged her horse to run wildly, trying her best to chase after Jiang Xiu while using all her strength to persuade him. Jiang Xiu's horse was unbelievably fast. His legs were strong and powerful, and his aura soared into the sky, as if he wanted to trample on the sun, moon and stars. He said coldly, "It's too late. I'm already here. And they won't let me leave either." Following this voice, an off-road vehicle rushed out from inside. It was surrounded by undulating mountain ranges, and it was unknown how this off-road vehicle was brought in. A man from North Korea jumped down from the car. He was wearing a black suit and had a ferocious look on his face. "Long Yingqing, how dare you betray the Heaven's Gate and lure the enemy into the Holy Land? Die!" Jiang Xiu rushed over from the back of his horse. In a flash, he descended from the sky and directly stepped on his head. Together with the car, he directly sank into the mountain. That person's head was directly stepped into his body. China's Jiang Luoxia has arrived as promised. His voice was like a clap of thunder that exploded in the mountain range. It spread out in a mighty manner, causing the wind and clouds in the sky to surge and envelop the entire mountain range. It was as if the sky was about to collapse. Chapter 250. In the Elysium headquarters, the demigods were arguing fiercely. They were discussing the plan to kill Jiang Luoxia. The biggest problem was Long Yingqing's relationship. The Long family still cared about this daughter. Long Yingqing's appearance was outstanding, and she was talented. Whether it was staying in the Long family or getting married in the future, she would be very useful. The Long family's demigod dragon strongly opposed the plan to bury Long Yingqing. A battle between demigods was too destructive. He asked the Elysium to save Long Yingqing first. The North Korean demigod narrowed his eyes. It is Long Yingqing's honor to sacrifice herself for the Elysium. My Zaiji is already dead. As his fiancée, shouldn't she be buried with him? Long Zizong roared, bullshit. My great-granddaughter only has an engagement with your Li family. She hasn't married into your Li family. Even if she did marry into your Li family, you still don't have the right to make my monk grandson be buried with your descendants. The North Korean elder said angrily, Long Zizong, Long Yingqing fell into Jiang Luoxia's hands. Do you think Jiang Luoxia will let her go? I'm afraid she has already been defiled. This is not only the shame of my Li family, but also the shame of your Long family. Death is the best ending for her. It is also the only way to protect the reputation of both our families. Long Zizong sneered. What era is it now? Only a stubborn old man like you would care about this. Even if something really happened, Long Yingqing is still a victim. What's more, you're just shooting off your mouth. I think you only want to avenge Li Zaiji. You don't care about my great-granddaughter's life. A red-haired woman at the table finally found a chance to interrupt. Alright, you two. Everyone knows how strong Jiang Luoxia is. First he killed the unknown. Then he killed the black-robed monk with the talisman. If we want to kill him, we don't even know how much we have to pay. Why are we still arguing here? We have to think of a perfect plan to kill him in one fell swoop. We can't let him escape back to China. Long Zizong, what is your great-granddaughter's life? Long Zizong's face was red with anger. All right, let's all calm down. An old European man said. Jiang Luoxia killed 2 of our Elysium's demigods in a row. This grudge is absolutely irreconcilable. If he doesn't die, our Elysium's reputation will definitely plummet. Right now, it is indeed as Serena said. We must not let him escape back to Hua Nation. We must win with one strike. As long as Long Zizong is willing to give up on his granddaughter, we can display our strength as we wish. No matter how strong Jiang Luoxia is, we can still crush him. A rough European man with a face full of stubble sneered coldly. Boom. A violent blast of air rushed in from the outside. The windows, doors, and glass all shattered. Everyone in the hall was shocked. The demigod of North Korea asked, "What's going on?" Outside, a European man ran in, scared out of his wits. He shouted, "Oh no, Jiang Luoxia is coming." What? The members of the Elysium were all extremely shocked. This was the headquarters of the Elysium, and no one had ever dared to barge in here with force since it was established hundreds of years ago. Jiang Luoxia really dares to come? Does he think that he can challenge all 23 demigods of the Elysium alone? They all rushed out, only to see that the sky outside was filled with dark clouds. The dark clouds covered the grassy mountains. A thunderous voice came from the horizon. I, Jiang Luoxia, have arrived as promised. They saw a man walking in with a majestic gait. Wherever he passed, the war horses neighed and the birds fled. Jiang Luo. At this moment, Jiang Luoxia's long hair swept up to the sky like flames. His clothes were fluttering in the wind. Lightning flashed in his eyes, and the entire world trembled because of his arrival. His aura was so powerful that it made people extremely fearful. The dark clouds in the sky and the grassy mountains thousands of miles away wailed under his aura. As he glanced around, it was as if he was looking down on the world. You've got guts. The one who angrily rebuked was the demigod of the Chow family. However, at this moment, facing the overwhelming aura of the spiritual cultivation, not only was his face full of shock, He even stuttered a little when he spoke. He had completely lost his previous awe-inspiring aura. A demigod who was not even 20 years old, a super demigod who killed Ji Wudao, and was hailed as the #1 demigod in Huaxia. Although the Elysium was in Europe, because of the unknown people who were killed by him, they paid more attention to him. They had pictures of Jiang Xiu's appearance after he was deified. However, when they were face to face, they felt that Jiang Xiu's aura was so shocking. "You really dare to come to my Elysium," Jiang Xiu said. "I, Jiang Luoxia, am a man of my words. I said that I will destroy your Elysium. I will definitely not disappoint you." "Arrogant," Long Zizong shouted angrily. "Ignorant child. Elysium is not a place where you can behave atrociously. Who is your master? Hurry up and tell me. I want to ask him how he taught his disciple." Jiang Xiu's face was as cold as water. "You are not worthy to ask for my master's name." Long Zizong was Chinese. He did not dare to say that he knew all the martial arts world in China. After all, he had left for many years. However, he knew most of them. He felt that it was possible to know them. Long Zizong saw Long Yingqing walking over with a pale face. She felt as if her soul had left her body. Her eyes were dull as she walked forward mechanically. She was really scared silly. No one knew what she saw when she followed Jiang Xiu into the sacred land. Only now did she truly realize what the name Jiang Luoxia represented. Long Zizong shouted, "Yingqing, are you okay?" Long Yingqing said, "Old ancestor, I'm fine." Long Zizong said, "Did he do anything to you? You still." It was a bit difficult to say. Although he said that he did not care, he was still a person from more than 100 years ago. He still cared. Long Yingqing understood what the old ancestor meant, and immediately shook her head. The demigod of North Korea said, "Long Zizong, the older you get, the more backward you become. Would your great-granddaughter admit in public that she was?" After that, he ignored Long Zizong's angry gaze and said, "Jiang Luoxia, you dare to kill a disciple of the Li family of North Korea. How are you going to pay for this blood debt?" Jiang Xiu sneered, "Why? Do you think that the people who surpass the Li family are very precious? Killing them is like killing livestock. Look behind me." Wherever he passed, no one could stand there. Corpses were piled up in a sea of blood. It was a mess, especially the disciples of the Li family. Not a single one of their corpses was intact. Seeing the Azura battlefield in the distance, filled with the corpses of the Elysium disciples, the expressions of the Elysium demigods changed drastically. The demigod of North Korea was so angry that his entire body trembled. "Good, very good. Since you dare to come to our Elysium, then don't blame us for relying on the demigods. Everyone, kill this thief and avenge the unknown black-robed monk, and so many Elysium disciples who died." Jiang Xiu sneered, "You're just a bunch of useless trash. You're courting death." The red-haired Serena suddenly clawed and pushed out. The nails on her fingers were bright red, like fresh blood. As she pushed out with her palm, a flame spurted out. She was not a natural-born mutant. On her 6th birthday, her house caught fire and her parents were burned to death. She saw a shadow in the flames. After grabbing it, she gained the power to control fire from then on. Later, she was adopted by a monastery in Gaoyua. She found a way to control and increase her power in the scriptures. At the age of 18, she became the youngest wizard in Europe, and the name of the fire god spread. "Too weak," Jiang Xiu said. "Without fuel, this kind of flame will extinguish on its own." As he spoke, he waved his hand and casually blew out a breeze. The color of the entire flame dimmed. With a bang, the flame disappeared without a trace, as if it had lost its power. The demigods of Elysium were all shocked. This was Serena, who was known as the fire god in Europe. Her flame attack was broken just like that. The power of her claw was enough to blow up a big tree in the Holy Land. Shocking, everyone was shocked. With such strength, it was no wonder that so many disciples had been killed on the way here. In front of him, ordinary people were no different from ants. Long Yingqing's eyes widened in shock. He could face a demigod so easily. Everyone, attack together. The demigods of North Korea saw that the situation was not right. Jiang Xiu was too powerful. It was difficult to win against him one-on-one. They had to attack together to prevent him from killing them one by one. In an instant, all the demigods attacked. There were strong lights, lightning, flames, and poison. Boom, boom. Every demigod's attack was very shocking. Among them, many of them revealed their deified state. There were all kinds of strange things and they erupted with destructive power. The demigods were like monsters that wanted to destroy the world, releasing the power that they had suppressed for many years. A demigod flew up to a tree in the distance like a bird and looked into the cave from above. It was empty. Blast him, blast him. The place where Jiang Xiu was standing was directly blasted into a 3 to 4 meter deep crater. Ha ha ha. Jiang Luoxia has been blasted into pieces. But before he could finish speaking, in the place where Jiang Xiu was just now, an invisible force gathered crazily. A dark shadow slowly walked out from inside. Behind him, there was a faint aura that rose. It was like fire and thunder, emitting a low rumbling sound. When they saw that person clearly, everyone's faces were filled with shock and despair. How? Chapter 251. External Release of Divine Power? The Elysium demigods' eyes almost popped out of their sockets. They had not seen wrongly. Their attacks had all been neutralized by the flame-like aura on the surface of Jiang Xiu's body. It was definitely not an external release of inner force, nor was it a spell. How is this possible? The demigod from North Korea exclaimed. The demigods were also stunned. External release of divine power was like external release of internal force, but it was only possible in theory. It was like internal force that had reached the level of perfection and was able to release divine power. Jiang Luoxia had only been a demigod for a short while. How was it possible for him to be able to release divine power outside his body? What level of divine evolution have you reached? The demigod from North Korea could no longer remain calm. As far as he knew, divine power could not be released even in the 4th level. External release of divine power was like a cup filled with water, and he had only added a drop of water to the cup. How could he not be shocked by such a huge difference? Who cares what level he is in? Kill him. One of the demigods roared and leaped into the air. His body suddenly burst with intense white light, as if he had turned into a scorching sun. He slashed with the sword in his hand. It was Swordmaster Alpha, known as the Son of the Sun. Don't hold back, everyone. Attack together. Jiang Xiu smirked coldly and leaped into the air. Silver light kept flashing in front of his forehead, and the will of the blade emerged. He activated the seal in his hand, and countless golden runes gathered, forming a long blade in the void that looked like a blade pellet. One slash. The long blade swung, and the silver light burst, as if cutting the sky. It flashed in an instant. The will of the blade was indestructible. Before becoming a god, Jiang Xiu couldn't unleash his saber will. Now that his divine telekinesis was clear, he could stir up the void, and there were sabers everywhere. Wherever the sabers were, wherever the laws were, even gods would have to retreat, let alone a mere demigod who had only evolved 3 times. Ah! The ferocious look on Swordmaster Alpha's face turned into one of horror. He didn't even have time to scream. The sun god sword that was famous in Europe was cut in half in the air. Even he was split in half in the air and exploded. It was destroyed like tofu. Alpha. The few demigods who were on good terms with him looked on with hatred. These people had gone through life and death with him. Before they became demigods, they had fought together to conquer the world. It had been more than 100 years. Now that they saw the sun's child being killed like this, how could they not grit their teeth in hatred? Furious chop fist. One by one, the European men, who were not very tall, suddenly leaped into the air. His entire body was surging with internal energy. His cloak was fluttering in the wind, and his body was emitting crackling sounds. His strength erupted like an angry dragon soaring into the sky. He threw a punch, and a white light flashed on his fist, faintly forming the shape of a sharp dagger. Good fist technique, condensing divine power into the form of a dagger. This move is not far from releasing divine power, right? It's enough to fight against him. Long Zizong exclaimed. A drop of water in a cup could be drunk, but how could it compare to a full cup? King of Assassins, kill him! The demigod of North Korea roared with bloodshot eyes. Brothers, support him! The King of Assassins was also confident in his furious chop fist. He was confident that even the representative of the demigods of Hua Nation, Si Wuxia, might not be able to last more than a few moves under his powerful fist technique. Moreover, there were so many demigods behind him, waiting for an opportunity to strike. Jiang Xiu calmly spat out. Chop again. His eyes were cold and emotionless. The shadow of the blade glided past, carrying with it a spreading blade will. The blade will condensed and took shape, cutting the air inch by inch. It was as if the space had been cut in half. Light flashed, and even the space was dislocated. Pucci. The body of the King of Shadows was cut from head to toe by Jiang Xiu, like a knife cutting through tofu. There was no trace, and only a light was left in the mind of the King of Shadows. Ah! The King of Assassins glanced sideways and saw that his entire body had been cut in half. Instantly, he let out an extremely terrified scream. My body! He fell from the sky dead. Everyone was shocked. Jiang Xiu had attacked twice so far, and each time he slashed a demigod, it was as if he was cutting melons and vegetables. Under the light of his blade, the demigods were as weak as ants in front of him. Even the King of Assassins could not block a single attack from him. Terrifying, it was too terrifying. The demigods of Tianmen were all terrified. They had agreed to attack together, and they had agreed to wait for an opportunity to strike. At this moment, who was so stupid? In the current situation, whoever attacked would die. Their lives were not lives. The number one demigod of Hua Nation was so powerful. The Hua Nation's satellite had received the signal of Tianmen Holy Land through communication with Galuya. At this time, the personnel on the satellite had already seen what was happening in front of them, and they were all stunned. Is this still human? The highest official ordered. Immediately send the video back to the country. Also, contact the Defense Department. An old military officer appeared on the video of the Hua Nation's Defense Department. Prepare the satellite signal. No matter the situation, do not cut off the video. The highest official said, we are borrowing Galuya's signal. If they, without waiting for him to finish speaking, the resolute old man from Hua Nation said sternly, the situation this time is not ordinary. Using our satellite system to directly enter Tianmen Holy Land, I will bear all the diplomatic pressure caused. Yes, he continued. Inform the special personnel in Galuya to fully support Consultant Jiang. Regardless of the cost, ensure that he can safely return to the country. The Tianmen Holy Land had their own anti-satellite and anti-signal equipment. The phone could no longer be reached, so they could only use the satellite to contact them directly. Now countless experts were rushing in, and the Dark Dragon was among the crowd. He had disguised himself as an old European man. Along the way, he saw the corpses of Tianmen disciples. It could be said that heads were rolling, and there were mountains of corpses and seas of blood. It was like a battlefield of Azura. This was all killed by Jiang Luoxiao alone? Along the way, there were hundreds and thousands of corpses on the ground. Many of them were top experts in Europe, but they were killed mercilessly like small fries. Their lives were tragic, and their deaths were lowly. In front of Jiang Luoxia, the so-called European experts and so-called big shots were a joke. This time, the enmity between us and Tianmen is huge. If not, we won't rest until we die. The Dark Dragon's expression was solemn. He had never seen Jiang Luoxia so ruthless and decisive in his life. He did not leave any room for negotiation. The Europeans along the way were completely stunned. Oh my God! Is there a large-scale war here? In Europe, dozens or hundreds of people dying in a terrorist attack would be overturned. However, the death toll in Grass Mountain was probably more than 1,000 people, which was comparable to a medium-sized war in Europe. Killing one person was a crime, killing 10 people was a hero, and killing 100 people was a god of war. Lightning flashed in Jiang Xiu's eyes. He raised his hands high as if he was holding a sword, but the shape of the sword could not be seen. However, when he suddenly slashed down, everyone could clearly see a huge sword light that was more than 10 feet long slashing down from the sky. The sword light flashed, and under the blade, It was as if everything was being squeezed out, forming a vacuum state. Only the invisible sword intent was wreaking havoc inside. The void was filled with sword intent, and there was no place without a sword. Domain of the sword. Boom, boom, boom. Every strand of blade will was an invisible blade. Countless blade wills burst forth, and countless blades flashed. The terrifying destructive power was enough to destroy the heavens and the earth, wreaking havoc on everything. The strong light that burst out formed a hemispherical shape. Dodge quickly. Jiang Xiu softly said. The first volume of the Soul Book, Ingenious Sword Light Flow, a remnant spirit in a single thought. Kill, 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 boom. When the sword intent of the domain of the sword was at its peak, it suddenly exploded. Regardless of whether it was the castle, rocks, trees, or grass, everything was cut and destroyed. The demigods who were in the midst of it were wailing like ghosts and howling like wolves. Their bodies were pierced by countless sword intents, and their bodies were riddled with holes. Almost instantly, their limbs were sliced into pieces, and blood splattered everywhere. Descending 9 mysteries to cleanse the heavens, 1,000 years of hard work. A beam of light flashed rapidly, and Jiang Xiu had already arrived. He rushed out of the light, and the souls of the demigods from North Korea flew out. Jiang Luoxia's hair fluttered, and his eyes flashed with lightning. Old man from the Li family, your life is here. You. The demigods from North Korea were scared out of their wits. Jiang Xiu's strength was too shocking. What kind of sorcery was this? Or was it martial arts? It was completely different. Its power was simply invincible. He didn't even have time to react. He felt a chill in his throat, as if a gust of wind blew in from outside. He realized that his throat might have been cut. The fear in his eyes slowly turned into hatred, but soon the hatred turned into regret. He covered his throat, and there were gurgling sounds coming from inside. Blood kept spurting out. Li Zaiji, what kind of enemy have you made for the Li family? Chapter 252. Blood continued to flow from the gaps between his fingers. He could no longer hear anything other than the sound of flowing water. His vision gradually became blurry. Hua was not the only country that was paying attention to the incident through satellite. North Korea was also paying attention. The Lee family played a very important role in North Korea's political scene. Seeing the North Korean demigod holding his throat and bleeding, the people in the North Korean satellite cabin looked on nervously. Will something happen to him? The North Korean demigod had many legends in North Korea. He was a godlike figure, and he gave the people of North Korea a lot of confidence and courage. He had a great name, Lee Jae-soo. Lord Jae-soo. The North Korean astronaut exclaimed. They all thought that Lee Jae-soo had died long ago, but they did not expect him to still be alive. He was supporting the Lee family behind him, which was a rich and powerful family of North Korea. However, at that moment, Lee Jae-soo might be killed by a rising star from Hua. That was too difficult to accept. They would rather Lee Jae-soo die a glorious death on the battlefield than die in such a cowardly manner. But in the next moment, the expressions on their faces changed. They came to the big screen nervously. On the screen, Lee Zaixio's frightened eyes slowly turned golden, like the eyes of a wild beast. Fine golden fur grew on her face. The wound on his throat, which he was holding, quickly began to heal. Deification. Furthermore, he had extremely strong recovery abilities after going deified. At the same time, Lee Jae-soo's body grew at a speed visible to the naked eye. His hair fell off and golden hair grew. His teeth became sharp. His body became full of vitality and was filled with great power. This, in front of the North Korean satellite signal, the people who saw this scene for the first time were shocked. Deification. The great Lord Lee Jae-soo has gone deified. One of the North Korean officers shouted excitedly. Deification? Yes. The North Korean military officer looked proud. Do you know what a demigod is? A true demigod is a mortal who has evolved into a god. They will have a different form from humans. This is called deification, and they will have unparalleled power. Just like the great Lord Lee Zaixio, even if his throat was slit, he could still recover and survive. There were many legends about gods in North Korea, and most of those gods looked messy. There were foxes and monsters, and they quickly adapted to the changes in Li Zixio's appearance. The astonishment in his eyes gradually turned into fanaticism. Lord Li Zixio will definitely kill him in anger. They were eager for Li Zixio to strike back at Jiang Xiao. Let the monkeys of China witness the prowess of our North Korean men. Li Zixio's expression also changed. The sound of bones healing came from his broken throat, and he growled like a beast. Jiang Luoxia, you've angered me. His voice sounded like a series of roars. Jiang Xiao, on the other hand, could understand what he was saying. It was an elementary godly language, but his eyes were filled with disdain. Another godly evolution that had taken the wrong path. If he continued to evolve, he would become a monster. The second form of godly evolution. Long Zizong was shocked. In everyone's impression, Li Zixio was only in the first form of godly evolution. He had actually hidden his strength. The difference between the two forms was enough to crush him. It was like the difference between the realms of martial artists. He survived Jiang Luoxia's attack. The demigods saw that Li Zixio had survived, and their confidence increased 100 times. He had broken Jiang Xiao's killing intent, and it made them understand that Jiang Xiao was not that strong. Li Zixio said, Jiang Luoxia, you are not weak, but you chose the wrong opponent. Today you will die. Roar. Behind him, a huge gaseous figure of a giant ape was faintly formed. It roared angrily, and its roars rolled out in all directions. Reckless fist. Following this roar, Li Zixio rose into the air and punched out. The force was so strong that it was as if the ape behind him was punching. It was as heavy as Mount Tai, and its strength was as great as 10,000 pounds. So strong. The people watching the North Korean video were so excited that they almost cheered in unison. The North Korean officer was so excited that he nodded his head. Just the power of that punch felt like it could destroy a small mountain. Too strong. Ancient Protoss. Jiang Xiao's eyes swept over, and he chuckled. How dare a useless person like you make such a fuss here? He laughed to himself. Brilliant sword light, with a thought from a remnant god. Fool. Kill. My sword Dao is not something that you can imagine. Jiang Xiao turned a blind eye to Li Zixio's shocking punch that was filled with hatred. However, his voice suddenly changed, slowly changing from Chinese to divine language. It was profound and difficult to understand. Listening to it, one would only feel incomparably shocked and their hearts would go silent. Soul return. Li Zixio, who was in the air, was stunned. Ice condense. Li Zixio's body made cracking sounds, and his body was frozen into ice at a speed visible to the naked eye. Soul shatter. Countless sword will emerged from Li Zixio's body. With a loud bang, his frozen body exploded on the spot, and countless sword light rushed out of his body. Boom. It shattered into pieces. Whoa. The people who witnessed this were all shocked. The old military officer in front of the video was stunned, and then he jumped up excitedly and shouted, Good, good, good. He didn't know what was good about it, but it was good to be able to kill a strong enemy. The people of North Korea who were watching everything through the screens looked as if they had just lost their parents. They were all dumbfounded and felt as if they had been struck by lightning. Lord Li Zixio, whom they had worshipped as a god, had been killed. The man who had wanted to show Jiang Xiao the strength of the men of North Korea was left with his mouth wide open, and his lips trembling. How can that Hua man kill people just by talking? It was too shocking. His heart was beating wildly. He was not the only one. The demigods present, as well as others, were all shocked. Even the man in the 9-python robe was stunned. Jiang Xiao looked back, and there was a glow in his eyes. He was disdainful and killed them as if they were livestock. He glanced at the demigods present and said, What are you going to do? We have so many demigods working together. Can't we kill a mere Jiang Luoxia? Everyone, take the initiative to attack and surround him. As soon as he finished speaking, the demigods in the field surrounded Jiang Xiao. Oh no! The old military officer in front of the video changed his expression. They won't be so shameless as to attack together, right? They are all demigods. Don't tell me they don't care about their identities? Meanwhile, scattered voices could be heard from the periphery. It seems to be right in front. The first batch of martial cultivators finally arrived and saw Jiang Xiu surrounded by more than 20 demigods. The battle was unusually intense, and many people were excited. They had finally arrived and had the chance to witness this shocking battle with their own eyes. This is too shameless. 20 demigods are surrounding Jiang Luoxiao alone? Do the Elysium not care about their reputation anymore? The person who said this was the demigod from China, Lu Yunhai from the Copper Trigram sect in Wui. Haha, you're wrong. A man with thin lips on the side said. He had an Asian face and his Chinese was very difficult to pronounce. He sounded like a Japanese. In a battle of life and death, there's nothing you won't do. Your grandson from China once said that all's fair in war. The dark dragon had also arrived. When he saw the situation, he looked worried. 1 against 20, how could he fight? The number 1 demigod in China and number 3 on the demigod ranking list. The dark dragon believed that no one in the Elysium was a match for Jiang Luoxia in a one-on-one battle. However, this was not a competition for rankings, but a battle to the death. Jiang Luoxia is too arrogant, too arrogant. He charged into the heavenly gate alone, but in the end he ended up being surrounded. Since ancient times, heroes have been tragic. Jiang Luoxia's long hair fluttered in the wind, and his eyes flashed like lightning. At this moment, everyone's gaze was deeply attracted to him, and they were deeply shocked by his courage. However, Jiang Luoxia is very powerful, but he's still outnumbered. A foreigner could not tell where he was from, but he felt sorry for Jiang Luoxia. He dared to charge into the Elysium alone. This courage alone was enough to make them sign a contract. The commander of the military department looked at the scene on the screen, and his heart sank. It was too detestable to be surrounded and killed. Get the people over there to prepare. The preparations must be in place. As long as there's a 1 in a billion chance, we must not give up. Yes. Jiang Xiu was surrounded. Jiang Luoxia, you're indeed very strong, and your methods are amazing. However, you've underestimated the Elysium. There are more than 20 demigods in the Elysium, and many of them practice secret techniques that are incomparably mysterious. Everyone, don't hold back. Kill. All the demigods are feeling immense pressure. If we don't kill Jiang Luoxia first, we might become the next Li Zaixiu. Crimson Flame. Law of Darkness. Yin-Yang Coiling Dragon. Countless fierce spells bombarded Jiang Xiu. The sky was filled with dazzling lights. Some soared into the sky, some flashed rapidly, and some moved forward like ghosts. They turned into fierce lights of different colors and charged toward Jiang Xiu. Jiang Xiu laughed contemptuously like a big boss. A fierce light flashed on his forehead, and the sword pellet flew out from his divine consciousness. He chanted an incantation. The second volume of the Soul Book, Cosmic Space Tribulation. Descend Crazy Fool Xiao Xiao. Congealing wind and freezing air. Whoosh. An inch of cold light flashed past. When the cold light flashed past, the falling leaves in the sky stopped falling, and the weeds on the ground stopped moving. The demigods in the sky all got into an attacking posture, and even the people who were used to eating from afar stopped. It was as if time had stopped at this moment. Only that inch of light was shining. Chapter 253. That silver-white glittering radiance bloomed with unparalleled sharpness. It was as if any matter, no matter how hard it was, would be completely destroyed in front of it. After a flash, it disappeared into the distance. The air began to flow, the wind began to blow again, and the leaves began to fall. Everything seemed to have returned to how it was before, as if nothing had changed, but it also felt like everything had changed. Boom. Suddenly, without warning, there was a loud noise. The stop time seemed to be catching up. With a sudden increase in speed, it exploded under the blade and tent enveloped by the radiance. The sky collapsed and the earth sank. The onlookers on the periphery only saw that after the radiance passed, the entire space exploded. The sky was filled with white light, and they could not open their eyes. They were only left with incomparable shock. In that instant, the entire world was silvery white, but then it was cut in half by the radiance, and there was a spatial dislocation. Oh my God! That's a missile explosion. When the people watching the video saw the huge explosion on the screen, they were so shocked that cold sweat slid down their foreheads. They could see more clearly, because the video was taken from a bird's eye view. The area covered a radius of hundreds of meters. Other than nuclear bombs, even the largest caliber missiles could not see its back. And this was only one of the inch lights that Jiang Luoxi shot out. What the hell is this? Is it Blade Dao? Or magic? The onlookers were extremely shocked, and their bodies trembled. No matter how experienced and knowledgeable the old officer in front of the video was, he was dumbfounded at this moment. He exclaimed in his heart, "Is there such a thing?" A foreigner boasted of his excellent knowledge. "I once saw a great wizard who was good at psychic power. He could condense his psychic power into a substance and cut through the air, destroying everything. I think it's a little similar." The strong radiance gradually dissipated, and dust filled the sky. In the dark, bodies were cut in the air by the silver radiance, bringing out bright red blood, like rose petals fluttering in the dark night. Boom, boom, boom. Bodies fell to the ground one by one. Water god Bolton, Luchuan Jianxing, Crimson Wings. Each of them was a famous figure, but under the radiance, they did not know where their power came from or where it ended. There was no trace to follow. Since there was no trace, there was no way to defend. They could only helplessly let their lives be taken away in a moment of despair. Oh my God! The corpses in the sky fell from the sky like dumplings. Are they all demigods? They were all killed. Everyone was stunned. They couldn't believe that Jiang Luoxia had killed 20 demigods with a single move. This was explosive, completely explosive. The onlookers hugged their heads and paced back and forth on the spot, looking like they were at a loss of what to do. When they looked back at the scene, they jumped up and down, because after confirming that it was actually real, it was still King real. Lu Yunhai, the demigod from China, was also stunned. As for the man from Re Nation, his eyes were dazed, and his soul seemed to have drifted away. The heads of state who were still nervously watching the situation through the satellite could no longer remain calm. They involuntarily stood up from their seats and moved closer to the computer screen. All of them were killed. The ground was littered with corpses and blood. These people were different from those outside. They were demigods. The Dark Dragon was also completely dumbfounded. He had always thought that Jiang Xiu was too radical and arrogant, and that this would eventually lead to a bitter end. However, he didn't expect himself to be the ignorant one. 20 demigods had joined forces and were killed by him. This was a slap in the face, and it hurt. However, he felt indescribably refreshed, and his blood surged with excitement. Jiang Luoxia, you're too awesome. At this moment, the entire underground world was shocked. They saw a bright light emitting from Jiang Luoxia's forehead. It was a 3-inch-long light blade. It was extremely dazzling and mysterious, as if it had a mind of its own. He had released that small blade just now. He had killed all the demigods in the Elysium with a single blade. Jiang Luoxia, you're indeed not just a demigod. A voice came from not far away. A figure stood there, his long robe fluttering in the wind. This person had black hair and black eyes, and his robe was embroidered with 9 wild snakes. Wow! The crowd was in an uproar. Countless people watching the video widened their eyes. 9 wild robe. Could this person be Elysium's leader? Jiang Xiu's gaze fell on the longevity stone talisman in his hand. So the longevity stone talisman is in your hands. Does this mean that you deliberately lured me to Europe? This wasn't hard to figure out. Unknown people had been killed by him, and China was a forbidden area of Elysium. They couldn't enter. If they wanted to take revenge, they could only lure him to Europe. Oh, Jiang Xiu was curious. You know that I'm not just a demigod? That person said, because I know that Ji Wu Dao isn't just a demigod. Since you can kill him, you're naturally not just a demigod. You should be a new god. Wow. Shocking, completely shocking. The crowd was in an uproar. Jiang Luoxia is a god. This was easy to understand why he dared to go to Elysium alone and kill 20 demigods. He was a god, an existence that could crush demigods. However, was there really a god in this world? Jiang Xiu felt that this person in front of him was a little familiar. as if he had seen him somewhere before. Since you know that I'm a god, how dare you provoke me? Hehe, Jiang Luoxia, you're too arrogant. The Elysium's leader laughed. If we were in China or elsewhere, I would be a little afraid of you. However, this is the Elysium Holy Land. I've been here for hundreds of years. How can I let you behave so atrociously? You're a god, but am I not? Boom, that person's body suddenly shook. A violent aura swept out like a gust of wind, condensing into an aura that was like fire and thunder behind him. His entire temperament had completely changed. Release of divine power. Both of them had the same power. Jiang Luoxia, what do you think? Jiang Xiu looked at him indifferently, and the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. He knew who this person was. From the first time he saw this person, he felt that he had a strange look in his eyes and couldn't remember. However, when he thought of the longevity stone talisman, he finally remembered. However, his face was a standard Han Chinese face, so he wasn't a foreigner from the ancient desert city. Other than those people who had the longevity stone talisman and wore the clothes of a Ming dynasty prince, the identity of this man was obvious. He was Wang Chonglin, the general of the western region who led the soldiers to kill the ancient desert city. You're just a useless person. Wang Chonglin grimaced and stomped his right foot against the ground. The power of this stomp was truly astonishing, and the earth began to tremble. With his foot as the center, cracks began to spread out in all directions, causing the earth to rumble and groan. There was actually a strong light shining from below the ground. Formation rise. At the same time, the fog in the sky surged. At first, it didn't feel much. After all, this was a very humid grassland. But later, the fog covered the entire sky. It was as if there was an additional layer of sky as far as the eye could see. He had spent a lot of effort and collected a lot of heavenly materials and earthly treasures to set up such a large formation underground. It was all for the sake of meeting a strong enemy one day. This formation could only be used 3 times in total. He had already used it once, and this was the second time. A formation? Jiang Xiu was a little surprised. Interesting. Interesting. A trace of anger flashed across Wang Chonglin's face. Jiang Luoxia, you're too arrogant. You still don't know that you're about to die. Jiang Xiu said, haha, communicating with the heavens and earth, storing wind and storing energy, and condensing the heavens and earth for one's own use. Indeed, even a god can be suppressed and killed. Since you know that, why don't you just surrender? Don't tell me you're thinking of using your body to resist the power of the heavens and earth within 100 miles? Wang Chonglin shouted angrily, trying to wake Jiang Xiu up. As he spoke, the entire mountain range began to shake, and there was a series of violent rumbles. The spectators on the outside could feel the ground shaking. The entire mountain range seemed to be swaying, as if it was about to collapse. Is this an earthquake? Many people's expressions changed drastically. Many of them were so scared that their faces turned pale. If there was really an earthquake, their lives were more important than watching the battle. I don't know. This is a formation passed down in Hua Nation. The Hua Nation demigod Lu Yinhai said. Formation? The Re Nation martial cultivator murmured. He was no stranger to this term. It was also passed down in Re Nation, but of course it was also passed down from Hua Nation. 10,000 miles Tiger Soul suppressing formation. Chapter 254. Within the control room of the Hua Nation's military, there was complete silence, and the atmosphere became very oppressive. Originally, they thought that Jiang Luoxia had already won, but who would have thought that another unforeseen event would occur? The sect master of the Elysium was also a god, and he had a formation in his hands. Long Zizong, who had not made a move because his granddaughter had fallen into Jiang Xiu's hands and was dissatisfied with these people's neglect of Long Yingqing, said in a trembling voice, Jiang Luoxia, don't fight head-on. How can a mere mortal fight against the heavens and earth? How can you fight against the sect master? Surrender. We are both Chinese, and the sect master will definitely be lenient. Wang Chonglin nodded and said, Long Zizong is right. It would be a pity to kill a genius like you. As long as you surrender, you will be ranked second in the entire Elysium. He clearly knew that Jiang Xiu was a god, yet he still lured Jiang Xiu here. He was definitely not someone who had nothing better to do. He had long harbored the idea of subduing Jiang Xiu and using him for his own purposes. As long as Jiang Xiu nodded and surrendered, he would have no less than 100 ways to control Jiang Xiu. Jiang Xiu revealed an expression that was not a smile. You think you've already won? Spiritual cultivation did not require humans. In the immortal martial continent, where people ate people and used all sorts of methods, how could the peerless experts who had survived not see through Wang Chonglin's little trick? Once they submitted, it was not too difficult for a god to control others, whether it was through medicine, goo, or poison. You're hoping for a fluke? Wang Chonglin said. Although gods can draw upon the power of the void for their own use, and are said to be inexhaustible, Jiang Luoxia, you and I are both gods, so you should understand that this is just a bluff. Gods truly can draw upon the power of the void, but there is a limit to how much they can draw upon. The stronger they are, the more they can draw upon. Our strength is simply not enough to contend against this world. As he spoke, he activated the formation in his hand. Instantly, the fog in the sky began to churn, forming a huge cyclone that kept pressing down. Within the cyclone, there seemed to be silver lightning flashing incessantly. Wang Chonglin was like a god that controlled this part of the world. He angrily shouted, Jiang Luoxia, do you want to die or live? Even some of the spectators in the distance were forced to kneel to the ground in the face of such a powerful aura. It was too frightening. This was a real god. The sect master of the Elysium. At this point, everyone finally understood why Elysium had been able to stand tall in Europe for hundreds of years, and had survived 2 world wars. It was even known as the Holy Land, and was forbidden land of the governments. So there were gods. Under the pressure of the fog, many people already found it difficult to breathe. The fierce wind that blew past their faces was like sharp knives, cutting open wounds on their faces. It must be known that they were still outside the formation. One could imagine how much pressure Jiang Xiu, who was inside the formation, was under. This is the power of your formation? Jiang Xiu was still as calm as ever. This power is enough to kill you. Jiang Luoxia, I'll ask you one last time. Do you want to die or live? Wang Chonglin said. Jiang Xiu said, of course I want to live, but my life is in my hands, not yours. Your life and death is in my hands. Arrogant. Wang Chonglin didn't have very high hopes for Jiang Xiu. After all, one could easily imagine the pride and aloofness of a god. It wasn't very likely that he would submit. Since that's the case, I'll slaughter a god today. Rumble. Rumble. Above the sky, the wind swept through the dark clouds. The whistling sound filled the heaven and earth, and continued to fall from the sky. The 100-year-old tree was crushed on the spot, and the high terrain of the mountain collapsed and fell apart. Jiang Luoxia, you asked for it. Then let this world become the tomb of a god. The faces of the spectators were already ashen, and their legs were trembling. They had never seen such heavenly power. Even tsunamis and earthquakes were not as powerful as this. Even the mountains collapsed. At this moment, the people who witnessed this scene were extremely shocked. The Chinese who were paying attention to Jiang Luoxia felt their hearts in their throats. Was he really going to die? He had already come this far. He had killed thousands of Elysium disciples and slaughtered 20 demigods, but in the end, he still could not cross the mountain that was Elysium. It was a pity. He could have ruled the world, but in the end he still failed. However, the white light on Jiang Xiu's forehead flashed again, and the sword pellet flashed out of his divine essence again. As he kept chanting, countless characters condensed toward the sword pellet. It grew from a 3-inch short blade to a 4-foot-long blade. Suddenly, the blade flashed. Jiang Xiu suddenly raised his head. Heaven-breaking slash. The blade flare on his forehead immediately soared into the sky and instantly extended to more than 10 feet long. Rumble. The huge blade flare slashed toward the sky. The flare of the blade flare burst out into an extremely dazzling white line in an instant. At this moment, all space, time, and matter turned into nothingness. The white line seemed to have cut the world in half. A crack was forcefully plowed through the sunken sky. Boom. The blade flare burst out and forcefully pushed open the sunken sky. Wind blades raged inside. Thunder rumbled incessantly, and lightning flashed dazzlingly. It felt as if the sky had been split open, turning into two torrents that poured down. Oh my God! Wang Zizong's eyes almost popped out. How is this possible? Wang Chonglin's expression changed drastically. This was a formation that gathered the power of heaven and earth within a radius of 100 miles. Jiang Luoxia definitely couldn't resist it. Even if he was a god, his divine power was limited and would be exhausted at some point. According to his cultivation, the power of a god could gather the power of 1 mile, but this formation gathered the power of 100 miles. It was simply unbelievable that he could forcefully split the formation with his own power. In other words, didn't it mean that the power of Jiang Xiu's blade was 100 times his own power? In fact, the difference between the power of 1 mile and the power of 100 miles was far more than 100 times. It was just like the difference between the power of a 1-meter tornado and the power of a 100-meter tornado was more than 100 times. It was difficult to estimate the magnitude of the difference. Everything in front of him had truly happened. Wang Chonglin could no longer remain calm. He cried out involuntarily, "What kind of blade technique is this?" Jiang Xiu said, "My methods are not something you can imagine." Wang Chonglin looked at the sky that had been forcefully split open, and his face turned green and white. His heart sank. Once the formation was broken, Jiang Luoxia's blade flare would come at him. He didn't dare to think about it. His body stiffened. He gritted his teeth and said, "Jiang Luoxia, I'll fight you to the death." As soon as he finished speaking, he gripped the longevity stone talisman in his hand. Suddenly, the stone talisman erupted with an intense light. He quickly chanted an incantation, and the sky rumbled once more. The crack in the sky healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. At the same time, Wang Chonglin's black hair turned into white strands that danced wildly in the wind. Jiang Xiu revealed a helpless expression. "What, you no fear now? It's too late." Wang Chonglin's expression became abnormally demonic. He looked like a god or a demon. Jiang Xiu shook his head. Of course, it wasn't because he was afraid, but rather because he was a little disappointed. The heaven-shattering slash was something he had comprehended while cultivating the path of the sword. Although it had also split open the formation, there was still a difference between the sword and the saber. At first glance, it didn't seem like much, but after a long time, its power was insufficient. That was why Wang Chonglin had to repair the formation. Afraid? Jiang Xiu lightly shook his head. Wang Chonglin, you slaughtered the people of the western regions who begged you in the ancient desert city. Today, I will bury you here. Wang Chonglin was shocked. You know me? You even know about the ancient desert city? You, who are you? Jiang Xiu said. I'm a demon from the underworld. I've come specifically to take you down to hell. Wang Chonglin die. Wang Chonglin roared with laughter. Jiang Luoxia, don't try to scare me. You're already an arrow at the end of its flight. You want to play psychological warfare with me? You can't affect me. I should be the one sending you to hell. Then die. Wang Chonglin was feeling pleased with himself, but the smile on his face suddenly froze. He saw Jiang Xiu's eyes slowly open. His eyes were pitch black, and at the same time, the divine inscriptions on his left arm finally erupted. Boom! A fierce light burst out from his body, like a pillar of light soaring into the sky. What is this? Wang Chonglin's heart trembled. He saw Jiang Xiu's hair billowing like flames, and his body was surrounded by light and wind. His entire body slowly rose into the air, like a god or demon. A rumbling sound could be heard in the distance, as if it came from ancient times. Roar! Spiritual cultivation glanced back, the lightning in his eyes restrained. He finally uttered the divine inscriptions. Chapter 255. When a divine glyph that had never been formed in this world appeared, the entire world seemed to have returned to the time when the earth was vast and desolate. There were no people, no trees, and no animals. This was the first sound in the world. Rumble, rumble, like the sound of thunder. The sound of rolling thunder came from afar. Before the Qi rainbow arrived, an overwhelming pressure had already descended from the sky. The thick fog condensed by the formation was immediately pressed down. The golden divine light inside was incomparably hot. Flames burned out, and the fog was instantly set ablaze. What is this? Wang Chonglin was terrified. The flames in the sky were too fast and too hot. In an instant, a large hole was burned in the fog of the formation. It was like the sun melting snow. Ah! When the flames shone on Wang Chonglin's body, he suddenly cried out. Everyone looked over in shock. The golden divine light suddenly gathered on his body and disappeared. Instantly, the flesh on his face, body, and arms instantly corroded and burned away. Soon, the eerie white bones under the flesh could be seen. Sect Master. Long Zizong cried out in alarm. This man that he regarded as the strongest was actually about to be defeated. Moreover, he might be killed by Jiang Xiu's mysterious glyph. Destroy my spirit essence. Wang Chonglin roared. Long Zizong naturally knew where the spirit essence was, but it was a vital point. If he destroyed it, he would die. But now was not the time to think. He immediately pulled out his sword and slashed. The sword stabbed toward his glabella. The tip of the sword had just arrived when it was charred black by the golden divine light. It turned into ashes and fell down along the body of the sword. Long Zizong paled in fright and hurriedly threw away his sword. What is this? His sword was a famous treasure sword that could easily cut open the body of a demigod. Unexpectedly, it was destroyed upon contact. Too terrifying. Ah! At this moment, the flesh on Wang Chonglin's body had been completely corroded away, and the lifeless skeleton beneath his feet began to crack and crack. Inch by inch, the skeleton crumbled and shattered to pieces. Jiang Luoxia, you will also be buried with me. Seeing this scene, everyone's faces paled. He was really frightened by Jiang Xiu's means. What exactly was that? Jiang Xiu was also incomparably astonished. No, it should be said that he was both shocked and elated. The first sound of the divine inscription he'd awakened was actually the first sound of the heavens and earth. Its might far exceeded his expectations. The 33 tones of heaven and earth, the 5 elements words, the 6 words mantra, the 9 words mantra, the 12 constellations words, and the first tone of heaven and earth. From this, it could be seen that the might of the first sound of heaven and earth was extraordinary. Regretfully, the first sound of heaven and earth was only the first sound of heaven and earth in this low-tier world. If it existed in the immortal martial continent, only immortal kings would be able to use it. Ha ha ha. Even so, he still laughed excitedly. A bunch of useless people. He raised his head abruptly and saw that the fog formed by the formation was still pressing down. Although the person in charge of the formation was dead, the formation had been completed. It was like a tornado, and the cause was probably just a small butterfly flapping its wings. Whether the butterfly died or not, it didn't matter. The power of heaven and earth within 100 miles was enough to crush this mountain range. Humph! Jiang Xiu smirked coldly. Do you think that I will die with you? Thinking of the cruel and ruthless smile on Wang Chong's face before he died, he suddenly rose into the air. You are too naive. You will never be able to see the scene of me being smashed into minced meat by the power of heaven and earth within 100 miles. Even if I die, you still won't be able to see it. The saber pellets that were constantly flashing above his head led him straight into the sky, rushing through the large hole that had been created by the divine patterns. His whole person was like a white rainbow that pierced through heaven and earth, rising slowly as if a god had returned to immortality. Boom! First strike. It was as if dozens of tons of bombs had exploded above the great formation, and boundless waves of air rushed into the distance. The people below saw a massive white scar appear, and they could vaguely see a huge saber that was several hundred meters long. Second strike. Another white scar flashed in the sky. Third strike. Although they didn't know what Jiang Xiu was doing, a figure in the sky was waving a 100-meter-long saber and continuously slashing down. That domineering aura was really like that of a god, and it was really incomparably shocking. Fourth strike. The figure flashed, and saber light filled the sky. From the satellite system in the sky, they could vaguely see that the saber light had formed some kind of huge pattern in the fog. This pattern was very complicated, and it was connected bit by bit, profound and difficult to understand. Break, Jiang Xiu said, and no longer looked behind him. He was led by the saber pellets into the sky, and fierce saber light suddenly exploded in the fog of the formation. Boom! It felt as if the entire sky was trembling, and the fierce saber light exploded with unparalleled destructive power. As the saber chi was activated, the sky collapsed and the earth caved in, killing everything. All of the time, space and matter were pushed out of the space. Saber intent was the technique, and infinity was the will. Saber formation broke the formation. The entire sky continued to tremble violently, and in the fog below, countless saber lights were killing each other inch by inch. Boom, boom, crackle, crackle. The sounds kept coming. Meanwhile, the people on the ground all raised their heads to look at the sky in horror. At this moment, they really felt as if the sky was about to collapse. This is heaven's might. The Hua Nation demigod Lu Yunhai was extremely shocked. Seeing this battle today, I have no regrets even if I die. His eyes were unconsciously filled with tears. The Japanese martial cultivator's legs went weak, and he fell to his knees with a thud. He looked up at the sky like a devout believer, and the foreigners around him had all become wooden statues. This kid is strong, isn't he? Dragon Zizong was also mumbling to himself. Flying in the sky, slashing the fog with his saber, and using his own strength to resist the power of heaven and earth within 100 miles. Such ability was truly like a god descending to the mortal world. Swoosh! Boom! The saber formation was activated, and countless saber lights were produced. Under the waves of killing, the fog of the formation became thinner and thinner. The light in the sky slowly shone through the fog, and the sky brightened up. Boom! After the last tremor, everyone's fog seemed to have lost its last bit of strength, and it could no longer hold on. The wind from afar blew it away. This catastrophe was finally averted. Once the formation was detonated, not only the people around, but also any living thing within 100 miles would not be able to survive. Even Jiang Xiu himself might not be able to survive. The fog dissipated at a speed visible to the naked eye, and the world was lit up again. A figure appeared beside Wang Chonglin. It was Jiang Xiu. He reached out and picked up the longevity stone talisman that had fallen to the ground. There was another one in the bone rack. You tried so hard to lure me here with the longevity stone talisman. You should be satisfied now, right? There were 2 longevity stone talismans. After refining them, the power of the saber pill would definitely increase greatly. This trip to Europe was not in vain. What are you going to do? Jiang Xiu glanced at the last standing demigod of the Elysium, Dragon Zizong. I pay my respects to Mr. Jiang. Dragon Zizong hurriedly bowed. Jiang Xiu put his hands behind his back. I've never wanted a life for a life. Instead, I want his entire family. Dragon Zizong's expression changed drastically, and his eyes were filled with fear. Mr. Jiang, please spare my life. You've destroyed the Elysium, and even the sect master is dead. The dragon family will never dare to go against you again. In the distance, Long Yingqing was so nervous that her heart was about to stop. She wanted to run over and ask for a marriage for the ancestor, but she knew in her heart that it would not work at all. Jiang Xiu looked at Dragon Zizong indifferently and said after a moment of silence, "Go. I'm not sparing you because I'm merciful. It's because you haven't attacked me since I came to the Elysium." Dragon Zizong was overjoyed. "Thank you, Mr. Jiang." Phew. In front of the satellite signal of Hua Nation, the old officer and the others all breathed a sigh of relief. Then they were ecstatic. They won. This victory was really significant to Hua Nation. Mr. Jiang, you really annihilated Elysium alone. The dark dragon sighed in the distance as he looked at the mountains of corpses and seas of blood on the ground. What kind of strength was this? He had completely annihilated the forces that had stood in Europe for hundreds of years and caused headaches for all countries. 9 mysteries descended to wash the heavens. 1,000 years of hard work. Even without a square inch, he was still outstanding. From now on, Jiang Luosha's name would shock the world. I've been slapped in the face again, haha. The shock in the dark dragon's heart could not be calmed down for a long time. The measures he had arranged for rescue were all useless. It was a waste of effort. However, it was much better to not use them than to use them. From now on, Jiang Luoxia's name would not be on the demigod list because he was an existence that surpassed the demigod realm. Chapter 256. The news of the Elysium being destroyed by Jiang Luoxia spread throughout the underground world like a hurricane, especially on the Chinese martial arts forum. Anyone who knew about the Elysium knew what kind of existence it was. There were 23 branches of the Elysium, and they spread all over the world. Each branch had a demigod overseeing it. In the underground world, especially in Europe, the Elysium could be said to be a legendary existence. The words of the Elysium sect master were more effective than the words of the European Union's president. They were also one of the few giants in the world. However, such a giant had been destroyed by Jiang Luoxia. Many Chinese martial arts cultivators were so excited when they heard the news that they couldn't control themselves. The Elysium sect had raised the prestige of China and deterred the evildoers everywhere. Some people said that Jiang Luoxia should be ranked first on the demigod list, and that he deserved it. However, the Chinese martial arts world was in an uproar. Jiang Luoxia was a god. Wow, this news was really incredible. Gods were legendary existences. They were a species from another dimension. How could they exist in this world? Immediately, some people expressed their doubts. Jiang Luoxia is a god. Is this confirmed? Someone confronted them head-on. One person killed 23 demigods. Isn't this the best proof? When this news was posted, the number of likes instantly exceeded 300. That person retorted, maybe Jiang Luoxia's evolved form is higher? When this post was posted, it received 53 likes and 123 dislikes. Although this person's words made some sense, the people still hoped that Jiang Xiu was a god. People's wishes were always good. Somewhere in China, an old man was also browsing the forum with the help of his grandson. There are many fourth form demigods in the Elysium, let alone the third form and second form. With so many demigods, it's impossible for a high-level deified form to deal with them, unless they have power that surpasses their level. Jiang Luoxia is most likely a god. Stomp on this person. Okay, Grandpa. Poster. It has been confirmed that Jiang Luoxia is a god. The Elysium sect master that he killed was also a god. Someone asked, where did the news come from? Who are you? How do you know so much? The poster went missing. This did not reduce the popularity of the forum at all. Instead, it became even more popular. While the Chinese martial arts fist was in an uproar, the various factions of the Heavenly Gates were already in an uproar. In the top floor of an extremely luxurious modern building in the capital of North Korea, the clan leader of the Li clan received the news and felt dizzy. The Li clan had made countless enemies in North Korea, relying entirely on the demigod in the clan and the Elysium forces behind them. Now that the Elysium had collapsed, the clan leader dared not imagine what would happen next. Patriarch, what's wrong? Seeing his incomparably tough patriarch almost fall, the subordinate hurriedly reached out to support him. It's over. My Li family is finished. The Li clan had been arrogant in the imperial state for too long, and had defeated many opponents who wanted to replace them. Without the support of the Elysium Gate, the Li clan had no way of contending with those people. Similar to the Li family, there was also the powerful network of forces under the Elysium. Japan, Southeast Asia, the countries of the European Union. 23 wealthy families were about to face a disaster. Just as Jiang Xiu was about to leave, he discovered a strange in-soul energy. He glanced over, only to see a gray shadow flashing before it disappeared into the distance. What was that? Jiang Xiu turned his gaze to the corpses of demigods on the ground. Although they were all demigods, they were already advancing toward the Protoss and might possess some inconceivable strength. Including Wang Chang's skeleton and Long Zizong's, all the corpses were present. Jiang Xiu noticed that the corpse of a European man was the most complete. He had not been dismembered by the inch of light's energy. This man was extremely handsome and had a head of golden hair. He slowly walked over and reached out to touch it. A fierce gust of wind blew over, and the man's body suddenly burst into flames. Jiang Xiu was astonished. How could a corpse catch fire when blown by the wind? Moreover, from the way the corpse burned, it seemed to be hollow inside. The corpse quickly burned to ash and was blown away by the wind. In soul leaving the body. Yin Yang dual fate? Jiang Xiu was shocked. This person was just a demigod, but the bloodline he awakened was actually so noble. The noble bloodline he spoke of was not the so-called noble bloodline on earth. It did not refer to one's birth in the royal family or one's birth, but to one's bloodline. In the immortal martial continent, the noble bloodline referred to the moment one was born. One's strength was far greater than others. For example, a drop of one's blood could allow a low-level god to instantly advance. And this so-called yin-yang dual fate was a type of powerful Protoss bloodline. When day and night alternated, he would be revived. It was a top-notch Protoss bloodline below the Protoss bloodline. It could be said to be noble. Jiang Xiu was also very envious of the yin-yang Protoss. When day and night alternated, their strength would increase. Even the lazy yin-yang Protoss was powerful enough to make one's hair stand on end. However, this race's inheritance was very difficult. Just like many powerful Protoss, the stronger the race, the harder it was to reproduce. I didn't expect to meet the yin-yang Protoss here. Jiang Xiu's gaze turned cold. Then all the more I can't let you live. If he killed him today, he would definitely come for revenge in the future when his strength increased. Who is this person? Long Zizong said, King Alexander. What's wrong? Jiang Xiu said, he's not dead. Long Zizong hesitated, but still said, it's said that King Alexander has a defensive divine artifact on him called the yin-yang dual dragon. No one can break through his defenses. Divine artifact yin-yang dual dragon? So it was just a divine artifact. He really thought that he had met the yin-yang Protoss here. Speaking of which, if he had awakened a yin-yang Protoss, he would have become a god long ago. Jiang Xiu said, where is King Alexander's lair? According to his speculation, the yin-yang dual dragon should have separated King Alexander from his body and given him a new body. However, after such a heaven-defying method, his body would be greatly damaged, and he would have to find a place to recuperate. According to human instincts, when he was at his weakest, he would definitely return to the place he was most familiar with and considered the safest, and that was his lair. Southern Europe. Long Zizong asked flatteringly. Do you want me to take you there? Jiang Xiu said, no need, just give me the location. King Alexander had just escaped. Jiang Xiu was confident in himself. As long as the direction was right, he should be able to catch up quickly. He took a few steps forward and chased after the force in the blink of an eye. He passed through mountains, forests, and rivers. Under Jiang Xiu's feet, no matter how dangerous the terrain was, it was as if he was walking on flat ground. The fisherman on the river saw Jiang Xiu walking directly over the water, and screamed in fear. At the edge of the cliff, he was also flying in the air. At this time, Hua received a call from America, strongly urging Jiang Luoxia to stop chasing after King Alexander. As for the reason, it was obvious that King Alexander had offered America a huge amount of benefits. Now, his only chance of survival was to put pressure on the Chinese government through Smith Barney. He wanted the Chinese government to come forward and persuade Jiang Luoxia to kill him. Hua was still very weak in terms of diplomacy, especially when facing America. Most of the time, they could only yield. There was no other reason than that they were developing their economy all over the country, and could not afford to be hurt. Moreover, they were no match for America. If you could not beat them, you could only compromise. However, on this matter, the Chinese side immediately rejected it. It wasn't that they were unwilling. If they could get some benefits from Smith Barney, it would be fine. The problem now was that they couldn't contact Jiang Xiu at all. In any case, they couldn't contact Jiang Luoxia, so they simply rejected it. Moreover, they took the opportunity to be very tough. There was no other reason. They were now awesome. Hua was a god. It was that simple. In an office in Smith Barney, a crazy and bold idea began to form among them. We can't sit back and watch Hua grow. Yes. They should be punished. On a glacier in Eastern Europe, King Alexander was powerless to escape. Dear sir, please let me go. In the few minutes before I died, I learned a secret. I can tell you. King Alexander in front of him was still as handsome as ever. However, his skin was very white, so white that it was a little transparent. Jiang Xiu said, I'm not interested. I just want you to die. A necklace dangled from King Alexander's finger. It should be the yin-yang twin dragons, but there was only one dragon left. If he had not been killed by Jiang Xiu, he would never have known the true use of this necklace. The holy maiden fell into the water. The divine punishment fell on the gate of heaven. When the twin dragons disintegrated, it was neither yin nor yang. Chapter 257. On the frozen river, the cold wind was as sharp as a knife. The handsome King Alexander fell onto the ice. Just as he was about to finish his fourth round, he fell without warning, dragging the yin-yang coiling dragon necklace in his hand. He sank to the bottom of the icy river, the necklace emitting a faint light. What a pity! Jiang Xiu looked at King Alexander's corpse and shook his head. Fortunately, the secret book of heaven was a creation of heaven and earth. If used well, one's achievements would be limitless. It could be said that it was a sign of becoming a god. Unfortunately, he had committed the most taboo, revealing the secrets of heaven, and was punished by heaven. But the yin-yang coiling dragon necklace is so powerful that it could reveal the secrets of heaven after his death. It must be something extraordinary. Jiang Xiu looked into the water. The necklace emitted a faint glow in the water. It was easy to find. He was about to enter the water when suddenly, the glow of the necklace dimmed, and the yin-yang coiling dragon necklace disappeared. It disappeared into thin air right under Jiang Xiu's nose. Strange. Jiang Xiu could not be mistaken. He could see the bottom of the water. The necklace had indeed disappeared into thin air. It seemed that the necklace did not belong to this world. It had returned to the world it came from. It was such a pity. It was such a magical item. After calming himself down, Jiang Xiu realized that he was lost. Along the way, he did not know where he was. There were no other people here. He believed that they might be near Siberia. After a great battle, it was not difficult to deal with more than 20 demigods. The main problem was that the sword formation had almost exhausted all of his divine power. Coupled with the pursuit, he was now overcome with fatigue. But there was no village in front of him. Jiang Xiu had no choice but to find a place to rest and recover. He walked for a long time without seeing anyone. On the surface of the river, he saw an ice cellar. It was a small house made of ice when people camped out in the wild. For them, it could save their lives. For Jiang Xiu, it could also help him keep out the cold. Thus he simply went in. Jiang Xiu began to meditate. He could not help but take out the 2 longevity stone talismans. He placed them in his hands and began to refine them. The first step of sword cultivation was to condense the sword pill. The second step was to raise the sword pill. The materials used were treasures of heaven and earth like the longevity stone talismans. Now that he was a god, it was much faster and safer for him to refine it than before. For a sword cultivator, the power of the sword pill largely determined his combat strength. It was the foundation of everything for a sword cultivator. Only with a solid foundation could one build tall buildings. Hopefully one day, I'll be able to create a soul mutation. This was Jiang Xiu's dream. In his previous life, he was a sword cultivator. Although his sword cultivation was extremely high, to the point of being able to defeat sword cultivators of the same level who had mutated their sword souls, he had never been able to develop a sword soul. It was a pity that he was unable to mutate his soul. His friends and himself all said that the time was not right, but it was not impossible. After all, his achievements as a sword cultivator were there for all to see. However, Jiang Xiu knew in his heart that because of that little bit of unease in his sword cultivation, it had triggered a demon in his heart that he had never been able to overcome. Now that he was using the sword, he felt a sense of ease. When he returned to the immortal martial continent in the future, he would definitely go to the Xuanji stone to test his compatibility with the sword. He did not know how long he had been meditating. When he had completely refined and absorbed the 2 longevity stone talismans, the sword pill in his divine origin had more than doubled in size. The light it emitted was also clearer. Let's give it a try. White light flashed on his forehead. Sword light flashed, and with a whoosh, he charged out of the ice house. The sword light pulled him up into the sky. He seemed to have turned into a beam of white light that shot up into the sky. Oh, awesome. Immediately, he felt like a bird gun had been replaced with a cannon. If he had been driving an Alto in the past, now he felt like he was driving a Ferrari. He felt like he had regained some of the feeling of being able to command the immortal martial continent. However, the burden on his body was still a little heavy. He floated back to the ground. It seems like these 4 longevity stone talismans have a strange resonance with each other. Although there were no substantial changes or improvements, the Saintess statue in the ancient desert city had placed a total of 6 longevity stone talismans. This meant that the longevity stone talismans must have a unique function, and this function was very likely to require 6 of them. My divine body also seems to have strengthened a little. Although the sword pill was nourished, it was still a part of his body. The strengthening of the sword pill had strengthened his divine body as well. However, it did not increase the number of divine marks. The path of divine cultivation was divided into spirit severing stage, Earth God, Sky God, Divine King. Gods were divided into 3 levels: Lower God, Middle God, and Higher God. Currently, he already had the strength of a peak Lower God. Jiang Xiu's current goal was to become an Earth God, break free from the shackles of the Earth, enter the universe, and embark on the path back to the immortal martial continent. This path was still long, and it would be extremely difficult to achieve in the short term. As for Sky God, they were much more powerful. They could travel through the universe and come and go as they pleased. There was no need to think about it now. Only after becoming an Earth God and returning to the immortal martial continent would he have a chance to break through to Sky God. As for Divine King, there was no need to think about it. Gods focused on awakening their bloodline and merging with the laws of heaven and earth, while immortals focused on comprehending the great Tao. From a certain perspective, the two were completely different, but they also led to the same goal. It's really troublesome to improve my strength. According to the immortal martial continent, as long as one had enough talent, worked hard, and had the right opportunity, there was a high chance of becoming an Earth God. However, on Earth, the spiritual energy was exhausted. If one only relied on awakening their Protoss bloodline, there was no guarantee that they would be stuck one day, and stuck until they died. He would not be stuck until he died. After all, Jianni had sent him the things he needed for cultivation. However, that would take more than 300 years. To him, that was no different from dying. Would he just sit there and become a living fossil? He was now looking forward to the shocking prophecy that King Alexander had made at the last moment. Unfortunately, he did not manage to make it in time, and was killed by the wrath of the heavens. The Saintess falls into the water, the heavenly gates fall. When the 2 dragons disintegrate, the world is neither yin nor yang. Jiang Xiu was not an ordinary person. He had lived 2 lives, and to a large extent, he knew about the future. He remembered that in his previous life, there was a rumor that the end of the world would come in 2012. It was quite intense, and many people believed it. However, in the end of the world did not come. As for what happened, why did so many linguists say that the end of the world would come? But it was fine as long as the result was good. But now, Jiang Xiu felt that the future must have changed. King Alexander's death was proof. What he said should be true. Otherwise, he would not have died from the wrath of the heavens. World is neither yin nor yang. Jiang Xiu was looking forward to the changes in this world. It would be best if it returned to the past, or if it produced spiritual energy. He had read in a book in the immortal martial continent that a similar low-level planet had a hole in the sky, and spiritual energy from the outside world suddenly poured in. Then that planet's ecological direction was forcibly changed from one of science and technology to one of cultivation. If that was the case, he felt that it was not bad. If that was the case, he was confident that he could enter the Earth God realm before 100 years, break through the shackles of the Earth, and return to the immortal martial continent. The affairs of the world are impermanent and unpredictable. Grasping the present is the right path. After saying that, Jiang Xiu shamelessly sat down and began to cultivate. He didn't know how long he had been cultivating. Based on the current situation, Jiang Xiu's cultivation progress was very slow. Most of the time, he was purifying the divine power in his body. The advantage of this was that his foundation was very solid. The foundation of cultivation was very important. If the foundation was not solid, it would be easy to drop in cultivation level if injured. If the body was not suitable, it would also drop in cultivation level if injured. In short, he was looking for an excuse to cultivate. More than a month later, at the edge of the Duck River, a couple was fishing by the river when they saw a dark shadow slowly flowing under the ice. The old woman was immediately shocked. "Oh my God, old man, look at what's under the ice." The old man stared for a long time. "It's a person, a corpse." He called the 7 villages over, broke the surface of the water, and fished up the frozen corpse. It was Jiang Xiu, who was obsessed with cultivation. He aimed at the location and jumped into the river, then began to drift freely. He himself did not know how many places he had passed through. Chapter 258. They hurriedly fished Jiang Xiu out of the river. The villagers would never have thought that this guy would shamelessly drift all the way back from Eastern Europe. They thought that he had slipped and fallen into the water somewhere nearby. Is he still breathing? How can he still be breathing? I don't know how long he has soaked in the ice river. He should have stopped breathing long ago. What a pity. What a handsome boy. The group of people looked at each other. A middle-aged man among them asked, "Why don't we call the police and let them come over to deal with it?" "Wait." The old lady reached out and touched Jiang Xiu. Her eyes widened as she said, "His body is still warm. He's still alive." She felt that it was a pity that Jiang Xiu had died. Holding a glimmer of hope, she tried it and really felt that there was a body temperature. "Forget it. He has been soaked in the water for so long that he has frozen into a popsicle." The old lady insisted. "It's really warm. If you don't believe me, you can touch it." The few people on the side saw that she was serious and all went over to touch it. Everyone's faces changed. Not to mention whether it was warm or not, his body was definitely not stiff. It was still soft. On such a cold day, he would definitely be completely frozen after falling into the water for an hour. He's really alive. Hurry. The group of people hurriedly carried Jiang Xiu to the village. However, just as they carried him to the entrance of the village and sent someone to call the doctor and prepare to hang him up with saline, the shameless guy opened his eyes and found that he was carried into the house by a group of rough men. They were taking off his clothes in a flurry. How could this be? He immediately roared. "What are you doing?" F***ck. Everyone in the room was startled. They were so startled that they jumped up. An old man who couldn't help and was sitting on the bench eating melon seeds fell off the bench with his butt. "Oh, you're awake. We're saving you." Jiang Xiu then realized that these people shouldn't have any bad intentions. It was very likely that he was found by this group of people when he was drifting in the water, and then saved on the shore. He immediately put on a good face and said, I'm fine." He quickly stood up. The old lady said, "Your clothes are all wet. Hurry up and change, or you'll get sick from the cold." After hearing what Jiang Xiu said, Jiang Xiu really felt chilly. Like humans, the body of a god needed heat to resist the cold. However, this degree of coldness could no longer hurt Jiang Xiu. He said, "Is there anything to eat?" Yes. Jiang Xiu took off his coat and leaned against the stove. The old lady scooped a bowl of noodles for Jiang Xiu and looked at Jiang Xiu worriedly. "Are you sure you're okay?" After drinking a big bowl of noodle soup, his whole body warmed up. In addition, there was a stove, so his clothes were dried very quickly. However, his coat was a British windbreaker, which was very absorbent and would not dry in a short time. "I'm fine. Do you have more?" "There's plenty, you can eat as much as you want," the old man beside him asked. "Young man, why did you fall into the river?" If Jiang Xiu said that he drifted over from Eastern Europe or Siberia, the old man would be scared silly. "I was careless and accidentally fell into the river." The old man said, "You have to be careful. The water is not solid yet. By the way, where are you from?" The two of them chatted casually. Jiang Xiu looked at the calendar on the wall. It was already December. including the time spent cultivating. More than a month had passed. He asked, "Uncle, has anything strange happened recently?" The old man said, "There's nothing strange. We stay in the village all day and don't know what's going on outside. At most, we just watch the news. Why don't I turn on the TV for you?" Jiang Xiu nodded. The old man's TV was okay. It was more than 20 inches, and it was in color. There were also many channels. Jiang Xiu chose an international news channel. It had been more than a month since the Battle of the Heavenly Gate, and there was no similar news. In fact, this kind of thing would never be on the news. Even the top rich people in the upper-class society did not know about it at all. It was a top secret in various countries. After watching the international news for half an hour, it could be described with 4 words: frequent natural disasters. There were many meteorites falling and earthquakes in American Barney. There were also many meteorites falling in Yunhai province in China. There were many earthquakes in western Shu. In particular, one of them said that after an earthquake in a place called Wulin in central China, the geographical area had increased by more than 10 kilometers. The relevant experts believed that this was caused by changes in the Earth's crust. "Young man, do you want to contact your family?" Jiang Xiu remembered that he couldn't stay in someone else's house. He said, "Oh, old man, do you have a phone here? Can I make a call?" The old man said, "There's one in the canteen." Jiang Xiu agreed. He could just walk away, but the other party had saved him and even ate his food. It was really inappropriate for him to just walk away like that. At the very least, he had to thank the other party properly. He went to his pocket and started to feel around. This time it was awkward. There was not a single cent. He found a phone that was soaked in water. The old man said, "What's wrong? Are you missing something?" Jiang Xiu said, "I think I lost my wallet." The old man said, "Could it have fallen into the river?" Jiang Xiu said, "It doesn't matter. There aren't many valuable items. How about this, old man? I'll leave my phone here with you. Accompany me to make a call." The old man also saw his phone and hurriedly waved his hand. "No need, no need. I'll accompany you." After drying his coat, Jiang Xiu went to the canteen with the old man. Jiang Xiu encountered a problem again. He saved all his phone numbers in his phone and didn't remember them. He only remembered the phone number of his home in Jiang City. His parents had gone to Annan, and his phone number had been cancelled. He still remembered a phone number. It was Nangong Koer's phone number. Because he personally called her that day and received a message from this number, he remembered it. He couldn't call her. Their relationship was so complicated. If he called her, what if the other party thought too much? When he mentioned Nangong Koer, he remembered that warm and wild afternoon. "What's wrong?" The old man saw Jiang Xiu holding the phone and hesitating for a long time. "The phone numbers are all in the phone." The canteen's lady boss said, "Where's the phone? Let me see." Jiang Xiu handed the phone over. The lady boss played with it for a while. "It's all spoiled. Take the town to repair it for 200 yuan. Who knows if the numbers inside can still be saved." The old man was a good person, but he was a bit hesitant to accompany Jiang Xiu to town and take 200 yuan to repair Jiang Xiu's phone number. Jiang Xiu also couldn't ignore this. Jiang Xiu frowned and said, "I'll try to call her." He dialed Nangong Koer's number. After the phone rang 4 times, it was finally picked up. Nangong Koer's pleasant voice came from the other side. "Hello, who is this?" Jiang Xiu was a bit embarrassed. That, it's me." The other side paused for a second or two, then Nangong Koer said, "Who are you?" Jiang Xiu was embarrassed. His old face was a bit red. It turned out that she didn't care about him at all. He was a bit embarrassed and said, "Jiang Xiu, I have something to ask of you." "You?" Nangong Koer's tone was very cold. "We don't seem to know each other well." A few days after she returned home, she heard a shocking news. The old man of the Jiang family caused chaos in Jiangnan because he made a mistake. He was punished by the Diaoyutai police, and the rich and powerful family that had been rich for generations fell in one day. In order to avoid being implicated, the Nangong family quickly cut ties with the Jiang family. As for the so-called engagement between her and Jiang Xiu, the Nangong family naturally didn't recognize it anymore. The current Jiang Xiu wasn't the son of a so-called rich and powerful family, but a poor boy who didn't have a penny to his name. Of course, she didn't care who he was. Anyway, except for that one time, they almost didn't have any interactions. Jiang Xiu said, "Yes, we don't know each other well. I ran into some trouble here, and I lost all my ID and mobile phone. I only remember your number." Nangong Koer said, "Why do you remember my number?" Jiang Xiu thought to himself, "I don't want to. You wrote it to me in Jiang City, and then I called you. What can I do if I remember it by myself? How do you want me to help you?" Finally, Nangong Koer didn't hang up on him. Jiang Xiu said, "See how you can help me. I'm in Liaodongxie River, all alone. I don't have any ID, mobile phone, or money." Nangong Koer said, "You came to beg me, and now you want me to think of a way?" Her tone was very harsh, and it seemed that she would hang up at any time. Chapter 259. Jiang Xiu said with a smile, "Isn't it because Miss Nangong is so smart that I thought you could help me think of a solution? To save me from the fire and water?" Nangong Koer said, "That's more like it." Miss Nangong was indirectly saying that spiritual cultivation was inhumane. Jiang Xiu pondered in his heart. Although what happened that day was an accident, and none of them wanted it to happen, some things happened. After all, Miss Nangong's pure body was ruined by Jiang Xiu, so it was impossible for her not to be angry. If she wanted to blame Jiang Xiu, she would feel wronged. "How about this? Find someone and I'll transfer some money to his card. You can come back with money, right?" Jiang Xiu said, "Okay." This could indeed solve the problem. There was nothing in the world that couldn't be solved with money. However, Jiang Xiu underestimated how remote his place was. After asking around, no one had a bank card. All they took out were passbooks from the rural credit union, and the money couldn't be transferred. Nangong Koer said in an unfriendly tone, "Why did you go to such a remote place?" Jiang Xiu said helplessly, "I didn't want to." "What should we do now?" Spiritual cultivation adhered to the principle that if you were smart, you would think of a solution. Poor Miss Nangong was stuck on the top of the smart ladder, and she had to think of a solution for him. It had nothing to do with her, but she had to worry so much. Jiang Xiu said, "Why don't you come and pick me up?" What? Even though Miss Nangong had a relatively calm temperament, she couldn't help but shout in anger when she heard such an unreasonable request. "Jiang Xiu, I don't think I'm very close to you. You really dare to ask?" Jiang Xiu licked his face and said, "If we say we know each other well, then we really don't know each other well. But if we say we don't know each other well, then we know each other very well." Bah! Miss Nangong spat, and her face turned red. This bastard really dared to say that. Damn it, he took advantage of her, and now he's showing off. What a scumbag! He really treated being a duck as a profession. "If you dare to talk nonsense again, see if I don't break your teeth." Although her words were fierce, her voice was soft. She was probably really shy. Jiang Xiu said, "Hee, just once. From now on, we won't know each other." A girl's heart was always soft, especially when the two of them had such a relationship in the past. Nangong Koer said, "Then when will you do it?" "Just this once, I'll help you this once. Next time don't look for me. Even if you ask me, I won't help you." Jiang Xiu said, Yes, I swear." The girl then asked impatiently, "Which corner of Liaodong are you?" After asking for the address, she hung up the phone. She promised to come and pick up Jiang Xiu. The capital wasn't far from Liaodong. He just had to buy a plane ticket from home to the airport, take a plane to Liaodong, get a car, and then spiritual cultivation. He felt that he couldn't make it up. It was really not easy to come here. He felt that it was troublesome just thinking about it. Fortunately, Nangong Koer really agreed. "Hey, don't tell me that girl fell in love with me. What a sin." After hanging up the phone, he said to the old man, "My friend is coming to pick me up, but it might be tomorrow from the capital. I'll talk to you for one more night, and stay at your house for one more night." The old man was very enthusiastic. Of course. When they heard that the old man saved a person, the people in the village all came to see. After seeing him, They all said that he was very handsome. At this moment, Jiang Xiu still looked like he was in spiritual cultivation. They couldn't even see him on TV. He was so beautiful, and his face was like a sculpture. In people's hearts, they all had the impression that he was extraordinary. When he was beautiful to the extreme, he wasn't ordinary. They all clicked their tongues in amazement. Jiang Xiu thought that if he hung a sign at the door and paid 10 yuan for each visit, he would have enough money to go back to the capital. That night, Jiang Xiu lay on a strange bed and couldn't fall asleep. He had a strange premonition that made it difficult for him to fall asleep. He wondered if Nangong Kou had arrived in Liaodong. It was really troublesome to not have a cell phone. At 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, this premonition became even stronger. One of the 3 divine lights in his body, a white divine light, seemed to give him a different kind of power. He had a feeling about the future, and he started to deduce according to this feeling. He suddenly sat up, then quickly put on his clothes and went to knock on the old man and the old woman's door. "Uncle, aunt, get up quickly. There's going to be an earthquake here." The old man inside was snoring loudly. It was the old woman who heard the noise first. She pushed her husband and said, "It seems that young man is looking at our door. Is there something wrong?" The old man got up in a daze, put on his coat and opened the door. The cold wind outside blew in, and he immediately woke up a little. "What's wrong?" Jiang Xiu said. "There's going to be an earthquake here." "An earthquake?" Jiang Xiu nodded. "Wake up the people in the settlement," the old man said. "Young man, are you sleepwalking? Why would there be an earthquake? There's never been an earthquake in Liaodong. Besides, how do you know there's going to be an earthquake? Did you watch the earthquake news too much during the day?" Jiang Xiu said. "Hurry up and clean up." There was no need to explain this kind of thing, because the facts would soon prove everything. About 3 or 4 minutes later, the ground under their feet showed signs of shaking slightly. The old man's expression changed, and then he heard the cup on the table shake very softly and loudly. The water inside even splashed out. "Oh my God, there's really an earthquake. Old woman, get up quickly." After the old man put on his clothes, he ran to take the gong and beat it. As he ran in the settlement, he shouted at the top of his lungs, "Earthquake, earthquake, come out quickly." Jiang Xiu looked at the town in the distance. The lights there were originally bright, but they were all dark in an instant. It was probably because the power lines were broken. Then he closed his eyes. With a whoosh, an inch of light flew out from his forehead. He looked in the direction of the town. His eyes suddenly opened, flashing a white light like the inch of light. His line of sight appeared on the inch of light, and everywhere the inch of light passed by, he could see a panoramic view. Along the way to the town, he saw that the town was in a mess. The ground was cracked, the buildings had collapsed, and countless people woke up from their dreams, crying and screaming. What scared them the most was that after the earthquake, the power supply was cut off. It was pitch black at night, as if the end of the world had come. Only a few people had flashlights at home, and some people had mobile phones, but it was not much use at all. As the inch of light flew past, he saw that the ground was cracking more and more violently. It directly tore open a big hole, which extended all the way to a bottomless abyss. Many houses collapsed directly into it, and those who didn't escape in time also fell into it. At this time in Ha City, Liaodong Nangong Kou, who was still sleeping in the hotel, woke up with a start. It was a mess outside. She hurriedly put on her clothes and took her luggage. The hotel was in a mess, and someone shouted loudly, "Don't take the elevator, take the stairs." Sirens could be heard constantly from the sky outside. "What's going on? Is it an earthquake?" Nangong Kou asked in a panic. "Yes, let's go to the open space downstairs." Along with the exclamations, the hotel shook slightly, and was slowly rising. This made them even more panicked. They were afraid that the hotel would collapse, and then they would definitely die. The ground below the hotel was rushing up, and the hotel was on the verge of collapse. It was pushed up by 50 or 60 meters, and the people inside it were running out crazily. The hotel's surroundings were also in the same situation. The ground kept rising, and with a rumbling sound, the ground kept cracking. Fortunately, the hotel didn't collapse. When Nangong Kou ran out of the hotel, She didn't recognize the surroundings. There were no roads in the surroundings, and there were many trees and flowers growing on the uneven rocks. It was as if she was on a mountain, and the ground was still warm when she stepped on it. The convenience store, which was near the entrance of the hotel, was at the foot of the mountain, which was at least 500 meters away from her. The store, which was open 24 hours a day, suddenly became dark, and the electricity was cut off. Then the whole city of Ha City became dark, and the electricity was cut off. The whole world was pitch black. Nangong didn't dare to move, and she didn't go to a crowded place. Instead, she found a flat mountain rock and stayed there. Her heart was beating fast because of nervousness. Now, she could only pray that the earthquake would end soon. At the same time, she cursed Jiang Xiu fiercely in her heart. It was all because of this B*****. If it weren't for him, I wouldn't have encountered an earthquake. B*****. If something happens to me, I won't let you go even if I become a ghost. Chapter 260. The earthquake lasted for a long time, and the screams didn't stop. At first, there were sirens, but in the end all the sirens disappeared. All the roads were destroyed, and the cars couldn't move. The whole city of Harbin was in total darkness, and there was no moon in the sky that night. It seemed like the end of the world had come. Everyone was hiding in the corners that they thought were safe, listening to the screams and screams. Nangong was a sporty girl, and she was braver than ordinary girls, but she was still scared and hid under a rock. She felt dizzy and weak, so she curled up in a corner. Nangong didn't relax until the epicenter of the earthquake was far away, and it seemed like it was about to stop. She picked up her phone and called her family. Her phone was still working, but there was no signal. Damn it! Nangong's face was as pale as a ghost in the dark night. Now, all she could do was to wait for dawn, and hope that the rescue team would come as soon as possible. This time, the earthquake was too serious. She saw that the whole city was divided, and all the roads were destroyed. Even if the rescue team came, it would be very difficult. Luckily, she survived and wasn't injured. As long as the earthquake stopped and dawn came, she would be able to leave this place safely. Time passed little by little, and the earthquake finally stopped. Nangong sensed that there were many people in the vicinity, and she also heard some faint sounds of conversation. It seemed that someone was injured and bleeding, which made her feel a little bit better. After being scared for the whole night, she fell asleep before she knew it. After dawn, the sky was bright, and someone shouted excitedly, "There is signal!" Nangong woke up abruptly and took out her phone at once. There was signal on her phone, so she called her family right away. Her parents had been worried sick for a long time, and they didn't sleep for the whole night. When they received her call, they were overjoyed. "Are you okay?" Nangong's daughter was in Liaodong, and the earthquake happened to be there. Hearing her mother's voice, Nangong who was always strong, had tears in her eyes. "Mom," she was almost crying. "My dear daughter, are you okay? Don't scare me." Nangong kept shaking her head, but her mother couldn't see it. After a long while she said, "I'm okay and I'm not injured. I'm just scared." Koer's mother said, "That's good. Your father and I were worried about you all night." Nangong slowly calmed down and said, "The earthquake has already stopped, and there won't be any more danger. You can rest assured." His mother was still in shock. The news said that the earthquake this time was very powerful. The amplitude was unprecedentedly strong. There was a huge shift in the Earth's crust. A huge crack appeared between Harbin and Yangda, completely separating the two cities. The underground water kept gushing out and formed a huge river, which is comparable to the canals in Jiangnan. Nangong was now able to see clearly where she was. She was on a high mountain. She estimated that she was at least several hundred meters above sea level, and she could see the whole city of Harbin as far as her eyes could see. She felt like she was in a dream, but the hotel was still standing on the top of the mountain, which created a strange scenery. This was definitely not something that could be done by humans. Seeing this scene, she felt that she was really lucky to have survived this earthquake unscathed. Her father Nangongdi's voice came from the other end of the phone. Ko, where are you now? I'll ask the local military to pick you up with a helicopter. Most of the buildings in Harbin had been destroyed by such a severe earthquake. The rescue team couldn't get in at all. If they wanted to get her out, they could only use a helicopter. Nangong Ko thought for a while. Harbin was not far from Jiang Xiu's place. She didn't know whether he had experienced the earthquake or not. If she left, what would he do? Would she leave him alone? She unexpectedly said, I don't know the exact location. I'll send a helicopter to pick you up after I confirm it. She wanted to stay and find Jiang Xiu so that she could take him back with her. You must take good care of yourself. Be careful. Keep in touch. The sky gradually cleared up. The people in Harbin, who had been hiding in fear for the whole night, began to move. People came out from the streets from time to time. However, the streets were full of potholes and pits that were several meters deep could be seen everywhere. Even the medical staff in the hospital had fled for their lives. The hospital was empty, and the injured people were nowhere to be found. The surrounding area was also isolated by a mysterious river. The news was being broadcasted on a big screen in a shopping mall. In some places, the TV signal was still working. The earthquake in Harbin was being reported on the news. People outside were trying their best to stop the rescue workers. The military had also shown up. All kinds of speedboats were approaching Harbin on the mysterious river. Seeing the whole picture of Harbin, the people in the square were in an uproar. It's so serious. More and more people gathered in the square. Looking at the TV screen, they were all stunned. Their homes were gone, and even the city was destroyed. Everyone hoped that the government would come to save them as soon as possible. The people on the mountain began to walk down. This mountain did not seem to have emerged from the ground at all. There were flowers and trees, and many of them were strange flowers and plants that they had never seen before. There was not even a path down the mountain, so they could only climb down. Nangong Ko, who was young and athletic, also took the initiative to walk down the mountain. She wanted to find a place to eat in the city and then find Jiang Xiu. At this time, Jiang Xiu and the villagers in the settlement gathered at the gate of the primary school. Although the earthquake was not as serious as that in Harbin, many houses had collapsed. Last night, he saw the whole picture of the earthquake in Harbin from the perspective of the inch-light flying dagger. The area of Harbin now was more than 3 times that of original Immortal. There were several more small rivers and a big river, and several more high mountains, some of which were dozens of miles wide. Such a huge change had never happened on Earth. In addition, he felt that the world seemed to be changing. King Alexander's words might be true, and the world was really changing. Wow! The people in the settlement couldn't help but exclaim when they saw the footage of the earthquake in Harbin on TV. The destruction was so serious that it felt like the end of the world in the movies. There was no way to estimate the number of casualties, but it must be a terrible number. My baby is still working in the city. He'll be fine, right? The morning sun shone down, making people feel a little warm. Jiang Xiu's heart skipped a beat. He glanced into the distance and saw a pair of terrible eyes in a collapsed building, flashing cold light in the darkness. He also heard a light breathing sound, which sounded like the sound of a beast. This scene reminded Jiang Xiu of the encounter in the ancient desert city. Those strange creatures didn't belong to this world. Oh my God! A woman on the side turned her head and saw this scene. She was so scared that she screamed. The strange creature was very large and looked very frightening in the dark house. What's that? Could it be a black bear? There were bears in the mountains of Liaodong. Why did a bear come out of the mountains? Someone shouted. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and take the guns. Doesn't someone have a shotgun? Hurry up. Only then did everyone wake up from their dream. For a moment, everyone was in a mess. The monster inside made a terrible low roar, but it didn't dare to come out of the dark house. Jiang Xiu thought, is it afraid of the sun? The people of Liaodong were so fierce. After taking the guns, they approached the monster step by step. They wanted to see what it looked like. Their actions completely angered the monster. It suddenly opened its mouth and roared. The roar was accompanied by fierce sound waves, which rippled out in circles. The villagers immediately screamed in unison. as if they were blown out by a typhoon. They flew out one by one. The hunter didn't care about anything else. In his shock, he couldn't help but fire a shot. With a bang, he didn't know whether he hit the target or not. The shadow inside flew out and jumped 5 or 6 meters away at an extremely fast speed. Jiang Xiu's eyes suddenly widened. He finally saw the monster clearly. It had a green face and fangs. Its body was like a lion, and it was covered in scales. Lion demon. Chapter 261. The lion demon opened its bloody mouth, revealing a mouthful of terrifying fangs. It bit at a villager. Not to mention its attack, the force of its bite could easily snap a big tree. A person's neck could be snapped with a crack. The person screamed in horror. Whoosh! A stone shot through the crowd at a terrifying speed. Like a bullet, it accurately hit the lion demon's forehead and shot through its head without any hindrance. Due to the violent impact, the lion demon's head was suddenly thrown back. With a scream, its body fell from midair. The huge inertia caused it to slide a few meters away after landing. It fell to the ground and did not move. What kind of monster is this? Zili looked at the lion demon on the ground in horror. Its body slowly turned into black smoke and dissipated very quickly. In just half a breath's time, only an outline of its body was left. In the end, it disappeared without a trace. The villagers were stunned and looked at each other. Is it a monster? An old man said. Most likely. I heard people say that whenever a disaster happens, such as a demon causing trouble, this should be a monster. Was it killed by a gun? I saw that there was an extra hole in its forehead. The hunter was dumbfounded. He had fired a shot before the lion demon pounced. How could a gun kill a lion demon? Of course, it was Jiang Xiu who shot it. At this moment, Jiang Xiu was also very surprised. Where did this monster come from? Did it run out of the mountains because of the earthquake? This place was close to the mountains. There were strange creatures in the mountains, such as the mandrill. They also looked strange, like beasts and demons. They were collectively called monsters. The mandrill had a physical body, but the lion demon did not. It was a kind of demon and was afraid of sunlight. It's really quite scary. The news quickly spread from the barracks to the village. It was said that a monster had appeared and was killed by a hunter. Many people did not care about the earthquake. After all, the earthquake was already over. That was how the Chinese people were. They were the first to come over to watch the show. The villagers bragged about it. Their saliva flew everywhere, and they were eloquent. Jiang Xiu saw the boss of the small convenience store, a woman called Aunt Chui. Lady boss, can I go to your place to make a call? Aunt Chui said. All right, you can go by yourself. They were all in the same place, so she didn't mind. Usually no one would steal things when the door was open. Jiang Xiu went to the convenience store and called Nangong Ko-er. This time the call was picked up immediately, and Nangong Ko-er said, How dare you call me? I was almost killed by you. Jiang Xiu said, Isn't he still alive? Nangong Ko-er said, You bastard, don't make sarcastic remarks. Do you know that there was a big earthquake in Harbin yesterday, and I almost lost my life? If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have come to Harbin. Will there be an earthquake if I don't come to Harbin? Jiang Xiu smiled and said, Exciting, right? Hearing her scolding people so energetically, he knew that she was fine. Nangong Ko-er was truly angered by this fellow's thoughtlessness. She said, I'm really asking for trouble. Jiang Xiu, I can't find you anymore. You can think of a solution by yourself. That's all. Don't, Jiang Xiu said. The traffic in Harbin is paralyzed now, and you can't go back to the capital at all. You can only go north out of Harbin, and then take a detour back. Anyway, you have to pass by here, so it's convenient. At most, I'll treat you to some noodles. Nangong Ko-er was just saying it out of anger. In fact, she was already on her way north, and she rented a jeep in a small town north of Harbin, and was now driving here. You want to send me away with a bowl of noodles? Do you think I'm a little girl who hasn't seen the world? Do you think I'm so gullible? Jiang Xiu said. Then I'll make 2 bowls. I say, Jiang Xiu, you're really something. I came all the way from the imperial capital to help you. And I even encountered an unprecedented earthquake on the way. Yet you just sent me away like a noodle, Jiang Xiu said. Then I'll lay an egg. Get out. Nangongko went all the way north, and there were all kinds of medical vehicles on the roadside. There were all kinds of planes flying in the sky, and all kinds of people were rushing to Harbin. She asked people along the way, and finally, she arrived at Qinghe town. It was already noon, and she was very tired after an early morning drive, so she had some breakfast in town. After asking people, she found out that it would only take about an hour to go to the settlement. Before she went in, she also bought some tonics to help Jiang Xiu and the people in the settlement. She didn't care about Jiang Xiu, but she was born in a famous family, and she was naturally well-versed in the ways of the world. A car drove into the settlement, and it immediately attracted a lot of attention. She got out of the car and went to the entrance of the snack shop. Excuse me, is there a person called Jiang Xiu? Aunt Cui was stunned when she saw Nangongko. Yes, you people in the capital are so good-looking. That young man is good-looking, and you are also like a fairy. Nangongko thought to herself. It's fine if you praise me for being good-looking, but that guy is just SOSO. But she still thanked her implicitly. Where is he? I'll take you there. Although the earthquake here wasn't very big, many old houses had collapsed. The people in the settlement were repairing them, and they were cooking together. Jiang Xiu was also there to eat. From afar, Nangongko saw a man wearing a fashionable British windbreaker in the crowd. He was really outstanding. When she saw him, she didn't know how to describe her feelings. She shouted, Jiang Xiu. Jiang Xiu turned around and saw Miss Nangong. He excitedly walked up to her. She was wearing a black leather coat, and her waist was tied with a wide belt of the same color, which made her waist look even slimmer. Her black boots made her legs look even more slender. Her pretty face was hidden in a red and white scarf, and she looked like a lily in the cold wind. Her appearance made the shabby village brighten up, and she looked like a beautiful scenery. Nangongko didn't blush or pant as she walked over. She walked with rhythmic steps, but when she saw that he was staring at her, she couldn't help but glare at him. What are you looking at? I've never seen anyone like that before. Jiang Xiu said. I've seen people without clothes, but people with clothes. There were so many people around them, and this guy really dared to say that. Nangongko's pretty face immediately turned red, and she was really angry. She shouldn't have been so soft-hearted and helped him. Bah! Nothing good comes out of your mouth. Miss Nangong also bluntly retorted. However, the Jiang Xiu in front of her gave her a dazzling feeling. Jiang Xiu was still Jiang Xiu, but his face was so handsome that it made people gasp in amazement. He was like a perfect god who walked out of a fairy tale, and he had a perfectly proportioned face. Is this guy really so handsome? Why didn't I notice it before? Jiang Xiu, is she your girlfriend? The old man came over and asked. Nangongko hurriedly explained. Old man, you've misunderstood. We're just ordinary friends. No, we can't even be called friends. The old man chuckled. If we're not even friends, why did you come to pick him up? Old man, these things are for you. Seeing that they were all nutritious products, and that they weren't cheap, the old man was overjoyed, and he didn't hesitate to accept them. To be honest, when he saved Jiang Xiu, he didn't expect him to repay him. However, if someone wanted to repay him, he definitely wouldn't refuse. And here's 10,000 yuan, it's a thank you fee. The two old men didn't want to accept them. Auntie, can you get some dough noodles, 2 bowls, and an egg? Before Jiang Xiu could finish his words, Nangongko couldn't help but kick him. This guy is serious. I'll get it for you. Nangongko was so hungry that she had already eaten some food. However, it was cold, and she got hungry quickly, so she followed Jiang Xiu to the old man's house. The old man and the old woman told Nangongko about how they saved Jiang Xiu from the river. Nangongko's eyes widened. She didn't know what had happened until now. It got dark early in the winter, and the transportation in Harbin was very difficult, so Nangongko had to stay here for the night under the old man's and the old woman's persuasion. At first, everything was fine, but when they went to bed at night, something happened. The old man and the old woman lived in two separate houses, and they thought that Jiang Xiu and Nangong Ko were a couple, so they arranged for them to live together, leaving Jiang Xiu and Nangong Ko to stare at each other. Nangong Ko looked alarmed. "You sleep on the floor," Jiang Xiu said. "Do you want me to freeze to death?" However, he had already taken the left side of the bed. Nangong Ko felt wronged. What's wrong with this guy? He still wants to take advantage of me. However, it was too cold to let him sleep on the floor. Even if he slept on the bed had to be heated up. She looked at the big bed and found that it was spacious enough, so it shouldn't be a problem for two people to sleep on it. She thought that it shouldn't be a problem. Chapter 262. The Kong bed in Liaodong was warm, and Nangong Ko turned her body sideways, showing her beautiful back to Jiang Xiu. Her beautiful eyes were wide open, and she looked alert. However, after a long while, she still didn't see any movement from Jiang Xiu. It seemed that he had fallen asleep. Nangong Ko heaved a sigh of relief, but she also felt a little disappointed. Then she felt a little hot, and she found that she was still wrapped in her clothes. It was dark, so she took off her coat, revealing the woolen sweater underneath, but she didn't dare to take it off. Soon she couldn't stand the heat anymore, so she took it off. Little did she know that in the darkness, Jiang Xiu, who she thought had fallen asleep, looked at her exquisite and delicate body, looked at the curve of her plump buttocks, and swallowed a mouthful of saliva. Jiang Xiu tried hard to shake his head, trying to get rid of the thoughts that he shouldn't have. He even used the method of cultivation, but from time to time, the wild scene between the two of them in the hotel that afternoon appeared in his mind. Spiritual cultivation sighed in her heart. Was he torturing her? Or was he torturing her? Suddenly, Nangong Ko screamed in fear, and she sat up abruptly, sobbing in a low voice. Jiang Xiu opened his eyes and also sat up. He saw that she was sweating profusely, and there were tears on her face. "I'm so scared." Jiang Xiu had heard from her that she had woken up because of the earthquake, and she had been scared for the whole night. He guessed that she must have had a nightmare. Spiritual cultivation wouldn't miss such a good opportunity to take her life when she was sick. He reached out and wanted to hug her, but Nangong Ko pushed him away. Jiang Xiu was caught off guard, and he fell off the Kong bed, lying on his back. Nangong Ko couldn't help but giggle when she saw his embarrassing appearance. "Are you crazy?" Spiritual cultivation was very angry. "Who told you to have such evil intentions?" Jiang Xiu knew that he was in the wrong, but he didn't argue with her. Instead, he climbed back onto the bed with a hopeless expression on his face. Nangong Ko couldn't help but want to laugh out loud, but she heard him say, "I just wanted to comfort you. If you are traumatized by this incident, then I will be the one to blame." Nangong Ko said, "At least you still have some conscience. Ben Gong allows you to come closer and chat with me." Jiang Xiu said, "Actually, there are many ways to relieve fear and psychological stress. We don't have to talk. We can do other things that can improve our relationship." Nangong Ko said, "Don't make me despise you." Jiang Xiu said, "I'm not afraid of her looking down on me. I'm just afraid that she'll scold me for being worse than a beast." Nangong Ko's eyes widened as she scolded him with a smile. "You're such a hooligan." Jiang Xiu said, "You should be happy that someone is playing hooligan with you. At least you have some charm." Nangong Ko said, "Stop talking nonsense." After a while she said softly, "Haven't I suffered enough?" Jiang Xiu said, "Come here. I'll tell you a secret." "What?" "Come closer. You're so far away. How can I tell you?" Nangong Ko's heart couldn't help but beat faster. She gathered her courage and walked closer to Jiang Xiu. However, she just happened to meet Jiang Xiu's eyes. She couldn't shift her gaze away. Jiang Xiu felt that his throat was very dry. He could clearly see the seductive look in Miss Nangong's eyes. He moved closer to her. This time Miss Nangong didn't push him off the bed. There was a flower in the suburbs. It was bashful and shy, trying its best to open up and release its passion. The wind was very strong, and the branches and leaves were swaying nonstop. The leaves were so soft that they couldn't resist the wind. After a long time, Nangong Ko-er's beautiful eyes became misty. Her long black eyelashes were stained with a drop of sparkling light. Her forehead was full of sweat, and she felt as if she was about to collapse. She didn't even want to move her fingers. Her heart was 99% satisfied. Miss Nangong felt as if she was in a dream. She felt that she didn't like Jiang Xiu. Yes, she didn't like him, but she didn't hate him. All of this was because of the ill-fated relationship that afternoon. She thought that it must be because she hadn't seen Jiang Xiu that many times. If the Jiang family hadn't been in trouble, the Nangong family would have married her to a political marriage sooner or later. In fact, it wouldn't have been a big deal for her to marry him. But now the Jiang family had been overthrown. Although the Nangong family was a big ship, it wasn't as reliable as a dock. It was too dangerous for the ship to be tossed around on the sea. Sooner or later, they would have to find a new dock. At that time, she might have to get married again. They couldn't be husband and wife anymore. If she wanted to find a lover in the future, she would let Jiang Xiu have it. Jiang Xiu didn't know that Miss Nangong Ko-er had such ridiculous thoughts in her head. In fact, there were a lot of such things in the rich and powerful families. Political marriages were all for the sake of benefits. After the marriage, everyone would have their own fun. Nangong Ko-er called out softly, "Hey." Her lazy voice made Jiang Xiu feel numb. Jiang Xiu asked, "What's wrong?" "We are friends, but our relationship ends here. Do you understand?" Jiang Xiu didn't understand what she meant at first, but he soon figured it out. He found it quite funny. However, this was also Nangong Ko-er's real problem. She knew that she had to be rational and calm, but she was always very emotional. She was the one who was tormented by this kind of person. If Jiang Xiu had to point out something wrong, it was that bad relationship that shouldn't have happened that afternoon. Seeing that Jiang Xiu didn't say anything, Nangong Ko-er thought that he might be angry. So she said in a gentle tone, "Okay, I'll help you if you have any difficulties in the future." Nangong Ko-er didn't know whether she should laugh or cry. If she didn't sleep now, she wouldn't be able to sleep anymore. As she closed her eyes, a wave of exhaustion washed over her, and she immediately fell into a deep sleep. The next day, Nangong Ko-er didn't come out of her room until 10 o'clock. She was full of energy. Her smile was like a lily blooming under the sun. Jiang Xiu was alone in the yard. When he saw her come out, he greeted her. "Good morning," Nangong Ko-er replied. "Where are your parents?" Jiang Xiu said. "They said that they went to town to buy groceries. I guess they want to cook a delicious meal for you." Nangong Ko-er said, "I see. But we can't stay here for lunch anymore. We have to leave quickly. We can't stay here any longer. It's not safe here." Jiang Xiu nodded in agreement. So, they left the 10,000 yuan that they had prepared for their parents. Then they drove away from the village. "How are we going?" "Let's go back to Harbin first," Jiang Xiu said in surprise. "The traffic over there is paralyzed. Won't we cause more trouble if we go there?" Jiang Xiu didn't know that Nangong Ko-er had to go back to Harbin. She had to hide the purpose of this trip from her family. If she went to such a remote place with Jiang Xiu, her family would be suspicious. "Do you want to listen to me, or you want to listen to me?" Jiang Xiu said. "You listened to me last night. So, I'll listen to you during the day." "Bah." Nangong Ko-er spat. Her pretty face blushed. She rolled her eyes at Jiang Xiu, but the flirtatious look in her eyes was so charming. Jiang Xiu said, "Let's go to the front and find a place to stop." Nangong Ko-er said with a red face, "I won't go crazy with you. You're so shameless." After a pause she said, "By the way, remember to pay me back the money." Jiang Xiu said, "Who are we?" Nangong Ko-er held back her laughter and said, "You are you and I am me. Although my family is rich, I'm just a student. If you don't want to pay me back, you can take it as the money you earned last night." Jiang Xiu said, "Hey, I don't like what you just said. I have to return this money even if I'm beaten to death. Otherwise, I'll really become that thing." Nangong Ko-er giggled. "It's good that you know." Harbin was very lively. All kinds of supplies were sent to this place crazily. The humanitarian spirit of the whole country was fully displayed. After they returned the car to the outskirts of Harbin, Nangong Ko-er or called her family. The Nangong family sent a helicopter to Harbin. It took 3 or 4 hours to come from the capital. Jiang Xiu asked Nangong Ko, or to take him to the mountain that suddenly appeared and put the hotel on the top of the mountain. All the people on the mountain had already left. Looking from afar, the mountain was so tall that it reached the clouds. Flowers, grass, and trees covered the whole mountain. These trees had never been seen on Earth before. The 5-star hotel was erected on the highest peak. It was a bit of a wonder. Chapter 263. Jiang Xiu frowned as he looked at the mountain and started to deduce its origin. He couldn't help but ask, where did such a tall mountain come from? Nangong Ko, felt that this mountain wasn't so high when she left, so she replied casually, it came up from the ground. I was in the hotel at that time, and I felt like I was in the sky, and it kept rising. Maybe it was buried underground many years ago, and it came out because of an earthquake. This was Nangong Ko's intuition, and it was also the explanation given by the media. After all, the history of mankind was short, and technology had only been developed in recent years. It was difficult for anyone who wasn't an archaeologist to know whether something similar had happened in the previous world, and even professional archaeologists couldn't verify it. In the distance, the dark clouds were rolling, and a bolt of lightning flashed across the sky. Jiang Xiu raised his head and looked at the sky with his sharp eyes. Shadows were moving in the dark clouds, and darkness was pouring out, as if a rainstorm was brewing. The whole mountain looked strange under the thunder and lightning, and the hotel on the top of the mountain showed the power of human civilization, which made Jiang Xiu feel that a storm was coming. Nangong Ko said, "Oh no, it's going to rain." If it rained, it would make the rescue work more difficult, and helicopters would be limited in rainy days, especially in thunderstorms. The dark clouds seemed to only cover the top of the mountain, and the sky in the far end of Harbin was bright. Jiang Xiu was even more confused. What's going on? Nangong Ko dragged Jiang Xiu and ran forward. Let's go, it's going to rain heavily. Do you want to be soaked? Let's find a place to hide from the rain. The two of them ran for a long distance in one breath and arrived at an abandoned supermarket. Only then did they turn back to look. The dark clouds were already very low in the sky. In the darkness, the mountain was like an ancient existence, displaying its ferocious strength. Boom, boom. Under the cover of the dark clouds, countless bolts of lightning struck down on the mountain. The mountain was cracked, and the trees were cut in half. The thunder and lightning rolled down along the mountain. My God! Nangong Ko covered her mouth. She had never seen such terrible thunder and lightning. Rumble, rumble. The sound of thunder did not stop, and the thunder and lightning did not stop. One after another, they struck down from the sky. The mountain rocks exploded with a loud bang. The electric current surged and formed countless electric nets in the sky, wreaking havoc as much as they wanted. It's so horrible. Under the sky full of thunder and lightning, the ancient mountain remained unmoved, standing resolutely. Why is there only thunder and lightning, but it doesn't rain? Jiang Xiu did not answer. His face was extremely solemn. 10 minutes later, the sound of thunder gradually faded, and the dark clouds covering the mountain began to disperse. However, not a single drop of rain fell. Boom, 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 boom. The sky was covered by dense clouds, and there was thunder and lightning, but it didn't rain in the end. This doesn't make sense. Boom. S's Ning. Could it be that what the scientists said is true? Boom to boom. Boom. The world is going through great changes. Human beings might evolve, or they might go extinct for the third time. Nangong Ko's information was from her family, and the outside world didn't know about it yet. However, scientists from many countries had come to similar conclusions, and incredible things were happening all over the world. Dead trees started to grow again, and some extinct creatures started to appear in the world again. What? After the lightning struck the mountain, multicolored light flowed, and was covered in a layer of brilliant luster. The mountain even seemed to be hazy with mist. White mist curled up in spirals, and it emitted an extraordinary aura of immortals, as if it was a paradise. Boom, boom, boom. Nangong Koer couldn't help but exclaim, "It's so beautiful." However, the aura of the immortals slowly dissipated like the sunlight in the sky. Then it returned to the simple forest. To be more precise, it was a messy forest. Boom, boom. Jiang Xiu knew that he was not mistaken. At that moment, it really did feel like a celestial mountain. Was it caused by the heavenly punishment? Or did this mountain have such potential? Or was it that the world was really going to undergo a huge change? Rumble. Boom, boom, boom. Nangong Koer raised her head, and an excited expression appeared on her face as she said, "Jiang Xiu, the helicopter is here to pick us up." Jiang Xiu nodded his head slightly, and his gaze was fixed on the mountain in the distance. Judging from the terrain of the mountain, it really did look like a celestial mountain, and it wasn't something that the forest could compare to. The helicopter stopped in an open space not far away from them. Many people in the surroundings were staring at the helicopter, and their eyes were filled with hope. They wanted to be helped, as they felt that they had lost everything. Their cities had been destroyed, and their livelihoods had been destroyed. A middle-aged man came down from the helicopter and ran towards Nangong Ko, or as he asked, "Young miss, are you all right?" Nangong Ko shook her head and said, "Uncle Bing, I'm fine." Uncle Bing looked at Nangong Ko, from head to toe, and when he saw that she was still alive and kicking, and her beautiful face was filled with energy, he heaved a sigh of relief and said, "It's good that you're fine." Nangong Ko said, "This is a friend that I met on the road. Can we take him with us?" She didn't plan to introduce Jiang Xiu formally, as his identity was a bit sensitive. Uncle Bing didn't ask any questions, and he just treated Jiang Xiu as an ordinary person that he had met on the road. He didn't even look at Jiang Xiu. City Harbin was in a mess right now, and the air traffic control was very strict. Uncle Bing was only able to come here because of the Nangong family's connections, so he didn't have much time. "Hurry up and get on the helicopter, the situation here is very bad." Okay. After the three of them got on the helicopter, they immediately left, as if they were escaping from a disaster. "Young miss, the world isn't very peaceful these days, so you shouldn't go anywhere after you return to the imperial capital." Uncle Bing was sitting in the front, and everyone was wearing headphones on the helicopter. "Okay." Nangong Ko replied obediently. Uncle Bing said, "The genetic department sent a confidential document, and when you return home, your family will arrange for you to have a comprehensive physical examination." If she had a physical examination, they would find out that she wasn't a virgin, which was really embarrassing. Nangong Koer's pretty face blushed, and she stole a glance at Jiang Xiu, who was looking at the scenery of City Harbin through the window, as if it had nothing to do with him. Nangong Ko was so angry that she wanted to kick him out of the helicopter. "There's no need for that, I'm really not injured," Uncle Bing said. "It's not a problem with your health, but a genetic examination. It's confirmed that some people's genes have the potential to cultivate, right?" Nangong Ko said, "Martial cultivation? I don't like it, and I've already said it before." Uncle Bing said seriously, "It's different this time. It's a genetic evolution, and there's also a saying that it's an atavistic phenomenon. You can become a demigod or even a god." Jiang Xiu, who had been looking out of the window, turned his head around. Nangong Ko said, "Demigod? God. What's that?" Uncle Bing remembered that there was another person in the helicopter, so he changed the topic and said, "Let's talk about it when we get home. I can't explain it clearly in a short time. Anyway, you must cooperate with our family's arrangements. A new era is coming, and if our family wants to keep its current wealth, we have to be ahead of others." Nangong Ko nodded. The real big families were all very forward-looking, especially in this era, when the wind and clouds were gathering. Decisiveness and creativity were the key to making a family prosperous. As a daughter, she had to do everything she could for her family. Nangong Ko was very clear about this, and she was also aware of this. After the helicopter flew out of City Harbin, it was as if it had just come out of hell and returned to the human world. The sky was blue, the clouds were white, and the bustling city was below. Everything became familiar. 2 hours later, the helicopter arrived at the imperial capital, and landed directly at the Nangong family's house. Uncle Bing, can you send a car to my friend? Nangong didn't want to receive Jiang Xiao. She wanted him to leave as soon as possible, and she was afraid that her parents would see Jiang Xiao if he was late, so she was quite nervous. Yes, miss. Uncle Bing seemed to have a high status in this family, as he sent a car over after making a phone call. Jiang Xiao thanked Nangong, then got into the car and left. Jiang Xiao didn't ask his driver to drive him far, because he was worried that the Nangong family would investigate him, and he also wanted to avoid trouble. When he got home, he pushed the door open and walked in, only to find that Lin Yueling was at home. She called out in surprise, "Mom? Why are you in the imperial capital?" You're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.